It'll probably run later than that though. It may run till 5. Before we get started here, a couple of announcements. If you haven't already picked it up for this session, we will be using the Post-Administration Workshop Handbook. You will want that in your hands to follow along through this presentation. Also, for those of you interested in the American Legion Writers Meeting at 5 p.m., we had an error in the program. It was listed at 2 different locations, both room 397 and Iowa E. That American Legion Writers Meeting will be in Iowa E, which is down on the new end of the building here. So, Iowa E.
I'm waiting for them all to get up there. Are we ready? With colors in place, hand salute. 2. Our next speaker will be John Durner, and it will be on post-administration and timelines. Oh, sorry. Sit down. A lot of feet heavy, so we need to stand a little bit too.
They can't fall asleep that way.
Oh, yeah.
So looking around this room, I know there is a lot of leadership in this room. Leadership not only on the department level and the district level, but more importantly, a lot of leadership on the post level. And I'm assuming most of you have probably held a post officer position at one point or another. And that probably all began in one of 2 ways. Someone approached you and said, "You'd be a good officer for the post. Don't worry, it's not that much work."
Yeah.
Anyone ever heard that one before? Yeah? Or you are one of those people that's very ambitious about the American Legion. You truly believe in our programs, you love all the things that we do, and you are anxious becoming an officer because you wanted to have an impact on the organization. And the problem with both of those situations is once you got into that job, all of a sudden you learned, man, there's a lot of responsibility here. I didn't know we had to do a 990. I didn't know we had to do a biennial report for the Secretary of State's office. What's this? What's a registered agent? Why do I have to file gambling reports with the Department of Inspections and Appeals? Hey, what's this stuff about sales tax I need to know about? You get into those positions with all the right intentions because you love the organization. But then you get the realization that we are a legal entity. Every one of your posts is a legal entity. Every one of your posts is a business. I used to laugh, you know, when I first got involved with the organization, and I'd go to county meetings, and we'd be talking about some of this stuff at county meetings, you know, just the people from the various posts conversing, and I remember we were talking with one of the posts and asked, you know, why are you struggling with this so much? And the guy just looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, because we don't have Gene Durner in our post. Gene is my dad, and Dad was the finance officer for our post for about 30 years, but what was different about Dad is Dad was a business owner. And so he knew a lot of those ins and outs, and more importantly, he had my mom, because Mom was his bookkeeper for the business, and I think everybody in the post knew very well that she was the one doing the books for the Legion. But that's the part that we struggle with, is when we get into these positions, we may not necessarily have that business experience. We may not necessarily have that knowledge. And that's one of the reasons why we started doing this workshop a few years ago. We started doing this workshop so that you don't jump into these positions blind, and if you're already in those positions, we can direct you towards the resources where you can get your answers. So hopefully you find this information helpful as we go through it. As I mentioned earlier before the cameras came on, but we do have a post-administration workbook that we have available for you to look at and follow along with us. And the first topic we're going to start with is the incorporation of posts. All American Legion posts are encouraged to be incorporated. They are encouraged to be incorporated for a couple of reasons. What do you think is the most significant? It's for the protection of our members. What if someone decides to sue your post and you are not incorporated? Who are they going to sue? They don't have an incorporation to sue, so they're going to sue your individual members. So it's very important that you consider incorporating your post and getting that done as quickly as possible. And how do you find out whether or not your post is incorporated? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do that. The first is your biennial report. If you're receiving a biennial report every 2 years from the Secretary of State's office, you are incorporated, as long as you continue to file that biennial report. If you are not getting one, there may be a couple of reasons why you're not getting it. You didn't change your registered agent with the Secretary of State's office, so they don't know where to send it, or you are no longer incorporated or never were incorporated. So how can you find out? You can also go to the Secretary of State's website. The Secretary of State's website has a database search function under the business services, and you can search that database for your post. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning here. When you do that database search, you're going to have to search for in more than one way if you don't find it right away. Because as you start searching for your post in that database, the first thing you're going to do is put in American Legion, right? And if you put in American Legion, you're going to get about maybe 600 to 800 hits on it. And then you got to sit there and scroll through all those hits, right? Or maybe you named, when your incorporators of your post filed the articles of incorporation initially, they may have put it in under your post name. So in the case of my post, it may be DeWitt Lostenau, post number 20. So you got to search for DeWitt Lostenau, see if it comes up that way. And then you got to know how to spell Lostenau. Or you may go in and search by your post number. They may have put it in as post 20, the American Legion. So you've got to be patient with that search, and you've got to be creative with that search and think of all of the different ways that they may have put that in there. Now, if you've done all those searches and you cannot find a corporation number for your post, the other thing to do is to call the Secretary of State's office directly. Because if you call that Business Services Division, they can do that database search for you, and they have better search parameters that they can use and do a more advanced search than what you're able to do online. So first step, find out if you are incorporated if you're not certain about that. Now, what if you're looking at that and you do find your post and you find out that you are no longer incorporated but you once were? How can that happen? Well, reason number one is if you don't file a biennial report. If you are not filing that biennial report every 2 years with the Secretary of State's office, they will administratively dissolve your post. Also, if you fail to appoint a registered agent or designate a registered agent or office for 60 days, not within 60 days of the change. So in essence, what is happening there is they don't know where to send you information. If you don't have your registered information, your registered agent or your registered office information up to date with the Secretary of State's office, they don't know where to reach you, and if the mail's coming back to them, they are going to administratively dissolve you. The other reason is the corporation's duration may have expired. And what does that mean? Most of the time when posts incorporated with the Secretary of State's office, that incorporation was perpetual. So as long as you filed those required filings, made sure your registered agent was up to date, your registered office was up to date, and made sure you were filing those biennial reports, it continued. However, it all depends on when the post incorporated and what the current state law was at the time. Because there is a period, and unfortunately it occurred right around the end of World War II, where they were only allowing 50-year incorporations. So in the late 1990s, we had a lot of posts whose incorporation status expired. And the posts weren't aware of it or didn't pay attention to it or for whatever reason, and all of a sudden they're finding that a lot of their incorporation status, they've been administratively dissolved. So it's very important that you know what gets you administratively dissolved. As I mentioned, you want to make sure that that registered agent is always current, and you want to make sure that the address that they have for your post on record is always current and accurate at all times. If it is not accurate, that's an easy fix. There's an actual form on the Secretary of State's website that is a statement of change of registered agent form, and you just complete the form, and there's no fee associated with it. You just complete it and send it into the Secretary of State's office, and that information gets updated. So if you turn to page 2, this is taken from the Secretary of State's website, and these are sections of the Iowa Code, as well as what the associated fees are with the various actions with the Secretary of State's office. So you'll see there as we go down the list, some of them will say no form behind it. If it does not say no form behind it, then there is a form for it. And if you are on the Secretary of State's website and looking at this information, when you click on the name of the form, it'll actually pull the form up for you. You'll see those sections of the code in parentheses. When you are on the Secretary of State's website, if you click on that section of the code, click on that number for the section of the code, the actual section of the code pops up in a PDF so you can read what those requirements are. So for example, if you want to know if your post is not incorporated and you want to know what you need to do to file articles of incorporation, you just click on that section 504.202 and it'll give you a one-page document that explains everything that needs to be in those articles of incorporation to incorporate. You send those articles of incorporation into the Secretary of State's office and they will charge you $20. Simple as that. Now, Dave, you heard past National Commander Rabine speaking this morning about the Mission Blue. One of the requirements of Mission Blue is that your post is incorporated. And we had a post that applied for a Mission Blue grant, and they did not, their post was not incorporated. And when I sent the information back to them saying we needed, your post is going to need to be incorporated in order for you to apply for this grant, they said, oh, we can't afford that. And I said, I'm a little confused by that statement. And they said, well, we talked to our lawyer and he said it's going to cost us $2,000 to get incorporated. And I said, you better find a different lawyer. Because it doesn't cost that much. It costs $20 and it may cost you some attorney fees to get it looked over. But we're even going to make that easier for you. If you look on pages 3, 4, and 5, we give you sample language of everything that needs to be in articles of incorporation. And this is my disclaimer, so I want everybody to look at me right here. The American Legion strongly encourages you to run these articles of incorporation past your attorney before you submit them to the Secretary of State's office. I am not a lawyer, but what would you rather do? Go in with a starting document that he has to make a few changes to, or get billed for the entire process of when that attorney has to draft those documents on your behalf? So go in with a starting document. We've got a pretty good sample here that has been reviewed by an attorney, but it hasn't been reviewed for a couple of years now. And just make sure that you have what you need. Have them take a quick look at it before you send it in with your $20. Anytime you want to change your articles of incorporation, and you can view your articles of incorporation on the Secretary of State's website. If you can't view them there, some of their documents are pullable. You can pull them up and review them online. Others, you have to request copies, and they'll charge you to get a copy of it. Normally that's only like a $5 fee for a document charge. So you may want to periodically review those articles of incorporation to make sure your post is still conducting business in that manner in the eyes of the state of Iowa. And if you would have to file a change to those articles of incorporation, you can file articles of amendment, and there's the section of the code that tells you, and the fee for that is only $10. You can also do restated articles of incorporation. Many of you maybe remember a couple of years ago when we changed the structure of American Legion of Iowa Boy State. When we did that, we had to file restated articles of incorporation because we changed what was in those articles of incorporation and increased the number of members to the board. And so we had to file those restated articles and pay a fee of $20 to get that done. But this stuff isn't as difficult as a lot of people will make you think that it is. Just read the sections of the code and take your time as you prepare these documents. I'm not going to cover everything in that list. One of them I will talk about briefly is the application for reinstatement. And if you were administratively dissolved, say you didn't file your last biennial report, in many instances you can get by with just filing an application for reinstatement if you don't have to make any changes to the articles and just pay a $5 fee, and there's actually a form for that one that you just fill out and pay the $5 fee and send it into the Secretary of State. Another one I want you all to consider, and that is the resolution to adopt a fictitious name. We have done this on multiple occasions as a department. So if you look us up in the Secretary of State's database, it makes it easier to look us up because you can search for the American Legion Department of Iowa and it will show. That is our official name. You can also search for the American Legion of Iowa, which is one of our fictitious names, but it'll bring it up in the search that way. You can search for the Iowa American Legion, which is another fictitious name that we have registered with the Secretary of State's office, so you can find it that way. And the reason you want to do those fictitious names is if you ever use any of those other names on any legal documents, at least you are still legal, and you're certain that you're using a name that is common and commonly used for your post. So think about those commonly used names and just make sure that you apply for that fictitious name to be adopted. And then, of course, the statement of change of registered office or agent. Anytime the mailing address for your post changes or anytime that registered agent changes, you're going to want to file that report, and it's a 2-page document that you have to fill out and send in, and they charge you nothing for submitting that form anytime that registered office or agent changes. Who should be your registered agent? Should it be the commander? Should it be the finance officer? Should it be the adjutant? That depends. Depends on how your post conducts business. What you really want to do is decide which is the most permanent position within your post. So in many posts, they have a tendency to keep an adjutant for a series of years. And that adjutant becomes familiar with all of this paperwork that is coming in and filing of the paperwork annually and all the things that have to be done. In my post, that is not the case. We change post adjutants every year. The position that is consistent within our post is the finance officer. So you have to decide within your post what is going to be the best person to be your registered agent. And it may not even be an officer of the post. It may be, if your post runs bar operations and you have a member that's managing that, you may put that member as the registered agent because they are the business manager or the manager of the business affairs for your post. But the important thing is whoever you put on that, make sure your post votes on it. Don't just decide who it's going to be and submit it. Make sure your post votes on who that registered agent is, not only because that's the way we do business in the American Legion, we vote on things, but the other reason you want to do that is so everybody's aware of who that registered agent is if anyone asks the question. And what happens if that registered agent dies, then you have more people that know you need to take action. So as I said, a lot of those forms are available on the website unless it says no form indicated, and then if you don't, it says no form indicated, you check on that section, click on that section of the code, and it will tell you what the requirements are for that section of the code. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to page 6. Does anyone else have any questions on incorporation of your post? Again, I can't stress this enough that you really need to make sure that your post is incorporated for your own protection. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about tax exempt status in your IRS filings. And I want your attention again, everybody look at me. Here's my disclaimer again. IRS regulations change frequently. The American Legion strongly recommends you consult a tax professional before submitting your annual returns. Do not use the information provided here as the sole basis for determining which forms your post is required to file. Dwight makes me say these things before we give these glasses to you. Dwight Dinkle is our judge advocate, our attorney. So, when we talk about tax exempt status of the American Legion, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there among the general membership because a lot of our general membership thinks we are a 501c3. We are not. We are a 501c19. Which is a special classification given to veterans service organizations. And within that, because we have so-called parent organization, a national organization, we have a group exemption number. And the group exemption number for the American Legion is 0925. Any of you that have ever filed a 990 for the post with the IRS, you know you need both of those classifications on the 990 when you submit it. Every post will also have an employer identification number. Even if you don't have employees, it's still called an employer identification number. That is essentially your post's social security number with the IRS. That is the number that identifies your post with the IRS, and every post should have one. If you do not know what your EIN is, call us at department headquarters. We have a file that was verified about 6 years ago of every post EIN number. We had it was verified by the IRS and sent to us. So if you're not certain what it is, give us a call and we will give you what we have on file for your EIN number if it has been a while since you filed a return, and we'll get to that subject in a little bit. Another thing that you want to make sure that you have on file with the IRS is the responsible party. Essentially, just like with the Secretary of State's office and that registered agent, so they know where to send the mail to you, you need to have that responsible party registered with the IRS so they know where to send mail to regarding your post status with the IRS and your 990s. And that form is an IRS form 8822B. And that is how you determine who that is going to. So whoever is going to be responsible for filing the 990 on behalf of the post, make sure their name is submitted on that IRS 8822B. So, who is required to file? What American Legion posts are required to file with the IRS? All of us. That used to be different. It used to be that if you had gross receipts under $25,000, you didn't have to file. That changed. Every post is required to file a 990 with the IRS. Now, which 990 you file is based on a few different things. Exempt organizations with gross receipts normally less than or equal to $50,000 can use the Form 990N. That is what they call the electronic postcard. You go into the IRS website, you complete the information, they give you an electronic confirmation, and you've met your requirements. Exempt organizations with gross receipts less than $200,000 and total assets less than $500,000 can use the 990EZ or the 990. If gross receipts are greater than $200,000 or total assets are greater than $500,000, you must file a full 990. Then, if the post is subject to unrelated business income tax, the tax exempt organization must also submit a Form 900, that should be 990, I'm sorry, it's a 990T, and pay the appropriate taxes. And we'll talk a little bit on UBIT in a little bit here. So deadlines for filing with the IRS. It has to be done on the 15th day of the 5th month after the end of your organization's annual accounting period. So it really depends on what your post has submitted to the IRS as your fiscal year. For example, the American Legion of Iowa's fiscal year ends on June 30th. We run a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. The foundation fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. Boy State's fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. So it really depends. I imagine that most of your posts probably operate on a calendar fiscal year, running from January through December. But you need to be aware of what that fiscal year is because that's going to determine what your deadline is. Loss of tax exempt status. You do not want to go through this, so avoid it at all costs. And how do we avoid it? You avoid it by filing your 990. Because if you do not file your 990 for 3 consecutive years, you lose your tax exempt status. Let me repeat that. If you do not file a 990 for 3 years, 3 consecutive years, you lose your tax exempt status. That means any income from the post, including dues, is subject to income tax. So make sure you're filing your 990s. And we all know that it does happen. Finance officer dies, new one takes over, doesn't know you're supposed to do it. You go 3 years and then all of a sudden you get a notification from the IRS saying that you're being revoked. So what do? Well, there's three different methods for reinstatement. The streamlined retroactive reinstatement. Organizations that were eligible to file a 990EZ or a 990N for the 3 years that caused their revocation may have their status retroactively reinstated to the date of revocation if they meet the following criteria. Have not previously had their tax exempt status automatically revoked, and they complete either the 1023, the 1023EZ, the 1024, or the 1024A with the appropriate user fee not less than 15 months after the date of the organization's revocation letter or the date the organization appeared on the revocation list on the IRS website. So if you fall into that category where you have the gross receipts less than $50,000 and you're doing the 990N, or gross receipts less than $200,000 and total assets of less than $500,000 and you're using that 990EZ, you can do the streamlined. If you fall into the category where you have to do the 990, then you have to do the retroactive reinstatement process within 15 months. So organizations that cannot use the streamlined retroactive reinstatement process, such as those that were required to file the 990 for any 3 consecutive years, and that were not previously auto-revoked, may have their status retroactively reinstated to the date of revocation if they complete that Form 1023, Form 1024, or 1024A with the appropriate fee not less than 15 months after the date of revocation. You must include with the application a statement establishing the organization had reasonable cause for its failure to file a required annual return, and we'll talk about that definition of reasonable clause in a little bit. At least one of the 3 consecutive years in which it failed to file. So you have to have that reasonable clause in at least one of those 3 years. You include with the application a statement confirming that it has filed the required returns for those 3 years and for any other taxable years after such period and before the postmark date of the application for which the required returns were due and not filed. So you have to file for those previous years before they will reinstate you, the years that you missed. And you must file properly completed and executed paper annual returns for the 3 consecutive years that caused the revocation and any following years. I see some confused looks. Do we have questions about that? Because I know some of you have gone through this, not necessarily posts in this room, but posts in Iowa have had to go through this. So then we get into the retroactive reinstatement after 15 months. If it has been more than 15 months since you were revoked, it's a different procedure that you must follow. Organizations that apply for reinstatement more than 15 months after the later of the date of the organization's revocation letter or when it appeared on the IRS website can have their reinstated date can be retroactively reinstated to the date of revocation if they satisfy all the requirements under the previous section, except that the reasonable cause statement the organization includes with its application must establish reasonable cause for its failure to file an annual return for all 3 consecutive years in which it failed to file. So if you get outside that 15 months, if you're within that 15 months, you have to show reasonable cause for 1 year. If you get outside that 15 months, you have to show reasonable cause for all 3 years to be reinstated to the date of revocation. So what is a reasonable cause statement? A reasonable cause statement establishes that an organization exercised ordinary business care and prudence in determining and attempting to comply with its annual reporting requirement. The statement should have detailed description of all the facts and circumstances about why the organization failed to file, how it discovered the failure, and the steps it has taken or will take to avoid mitigation future failures. For detailed explanation, see Section 8 of Revenue Procedures 2014-11 Reinstatement Procedures. What happens if you cannot get retroactively reinstated under any of these 3 conditions? You have to completely start the process over and refile for tax-exempt status with the IRS. And that's when it becomes a very long, grueling process. So the easiest way to avoid that is to just make sure you're filing that 990 every year. Yes, question?
Another organization, we had that problem. We were not notified we're missing any, and this is one of the things I'm a little upset with the IRS about, is we were not told that we missed any of them until after 15 months after the 3rd time. What happened was the fact that the person who was doing the filing thought that they had done it right, but did not stay online to get the
Okay, to kind of paraphrase what was just said for those that couldn't hear, he's talking about another organization that he is a member of, said they did not get the notification until after the 15 months, and they thought that they were in compliance because they had filed the returns but did not wait for the confirmation of those filed returns. And I cannot stress that enough. When you file that 990, make sure you get that confirmation, especially if you're filing the 990N. You may have to sit there and wait for it a while, as he mentioned. He said you might have to wait 15 minutes for that confirmation to come back, but you do want that 990N confirmation. Now, the other thing that you can do, if you're not certain whether that 990N went through or not certain whether the IRS received your 990EZ or your 990, you can go in and look those up. All you have to do is on the IRS website, there's a section up in the upper right-hand corner that says Charities and Nonprofits. You click on that Charities and Nonprofits, and in there is a search function. And I am not going to lie to you, it is not easy to find, because you click on search for a charity, and then it takes you into this whole long text, and you have to read through that before you finally find the link where you actually search the database, and then it brings it up. And then you have to enter a number in and hit search again. I mean, they make you go through 4 steps to do the search, and I don't understand it, but that's the government, and that's the IRS, and that's why we all love them so much. It's just one of those things, but you can always go in and verify. And when Dave was talking about the Mission Blue Post Assistance Program, we have received some applications in that did not include their IRS 990 or a copy of it. But the Post said they filed it, and when I would contact the Post and ask for their EIN number, I could go in, put in their EIN number, and I can pull up their latest returns. And if you have the patience for it, you can actually go in and search for Post returns, because all of you that are filing 990, that is public information. We are a nonprofit. 990s are public information. Anybody can go in and search your 990. So just be aware of that. Penalties for late filing. If an organization files its 990 after the due date, including any extensions, they're going to impose a penalty of $20 per day for each day that the return is late. The maximum penalty is $10,000 or 5% of the organization's gross receipts, whichever is less. And the penalty increases to $100 a day, up to a maximum of $50,000 for an organization whose gross receipts exceed $1 million. I want to be a member of that Post. Oh. An organization that fails to file the required informational return, the 990N, the 990EZ, or the 990 for 3 consecutive years will lose its status. Incomplete returns. We heard Jim, at least some of you heard Jim, talk about they didn't get the confirmation on their 990 when they filed that 990N electronically. Incomplete return is considered a late return. They do not start that clock ticking until you give them a complete return. So if you do not have confirmation that they have received your IRS 990, you may want to follow up with them. And the other thing is you may not want to wait until the deadline date, because those penalties are imposed. So what happens if your Post gets imposed with a penalty? What should you do? Well, obviously avoiding it is your best first option, but it happens. You know, the Post finance officer's been in the hospital. Post finance officer came down with COVID, and he has more things on his mind than filing the 990. And you filed late. What should you do in those instances? My recommendation is to reach out to our congressional offices. I know of Posts that have done this. I know of it firsthand. When a Post has filed its 990 late, we called the IRS, or called the congressional offices of Senator Harkin and of Senator Grassley at the time, and said, you know, if we have to pay this fine, all that does is take away from scholarships, it takes away from other things that we do in our communities. Is there anything you can do to help us? And those constituent service people that work in those congressional office many times can get those fees either reduced or get them completely absolved. So don't be afraid to ask for help. So just keep that in mind if you are ever in one of those situations. Contributions to veterans organizations. How many of you gone in and tried to get a grant from a business or a donation from a business, and they ask if you're a 501c3 and you have to answer no? And they say, oh, we can't give to you. Contributions to veterans organizations are tax deductible. Contributions to 501c19s are tax deductible. Are contributions to every 501c19 the same? Do they all enjoy the same tax deductibility? The answer is no. In order to enjoy that tax deductibility under Internal Revenue Code 107C3, contributions to a 501c19, the 501c19, at least 90% of their members must be wartime veterans. The IRS code actually says substantially all, but they have defined substantially all to mean 90%. So are contributions to the American Legion tax deductible under Internal Revenue Code 170C3? Yes, because our members are wartime veterans. Even with our change in eligibility dates, when we changed our eligibility dates, they changed the definition of wartime service. That wartime service now goes back to December of 1941. So contributions to the American Legion are still tax deductible under that section of the code. And I'm just going to touch on this briefly because that's not what this class is about. But what can you do when you run into those situations where a foundation or a business will not make a donation to you because their corporate rules say that they can only give to 501c3s? Do you have any recourse? Yes, you do. It's called American Legion Charities. It's a 501c3 created by the national organization, and there are procedures that you will have to follow, but essentially what happens is the money is donated to the American Legion Charities, and American Legion Charities then returns that money to your post. And there are procedures for that, and we can get you those procedures. It is done through the National Judge Advocate's Office, and we can provide that information to you. Unrelated business income tax. Even though the American Legion is recognized as tax exempt, you still may be liable for tax on unrelated business income. So to be considered unrelated, a trade or business must be regularly carried on and not substantially related to the performance of an organization's exempt purposes other than its need to raise money to carry on programs. An exempt organization that has $1,000 or more of gross income from unrelated business must file a 990T. The obligation to file that 990T is in addition to the obligation to file your annual return, whether that be the 990N, the 990EZ, or the 990. If your post is operating a bar or dining facility or rents its facility to non-members, you may want to look into that with your tax professional to see if those are subject to unrelated business income tax, because that income may be related to it. Now, there is a publication out there, and I have it stated on page 10. It's IRS Publication 3386, Tax Guide for Veterans Organizations. Consult your tax professional, but there is a giant loophole that is outlined in that book when it comes to unrelated business income tax. If all of the work is being performed by volunteers, a lot of times that unrelated business income tax does not apply. But you must show that all of that work that generated that income was performed by volunteers. If you have one employee sweeping the floor or mopping the floor and cleaning toilets and you're paying that employee to do it, you've lost your loophole. So talk to your tax professionals to see if that income is designated as unrelated business income tax or not. Payroll taxes. Any of you that are employers, normally this is a longer session, and we kind of do an all-day session, and we go into some of those payroll taxes that you may be subject to if you have employees, and as well as those filing requirements, but we are not covering those today. But if you do have employees, make sure you are familiar with those. Many of you will need an IRS determination letter at some point. Whether you're asking for a donation from someone and they want you to prove your tax exempt status, or if you're applying for a gambling license and you have to show your tax exempt status, you will need that IRS determination letter. And I'm sure every post has it readily available in the top file drawer of the office of their post, right? Most of you have probably never seen it, but it's not that hard to obtain. All you have to do is contact the National Judge Advocate's office at our national headquarters, and they will issue you an IRS determination letter. Once you get that, keep it in that top drawer of your filing cabinet at your post so you have it for future use. But you can obtain that paperwork without having to search through 100 years worth of records. Sales tax. Are we exempt from sales tax? No. We are exempt from income tax. We are not exempt from sales tax under Iowa law. And we'll talk about sales tax in a little bit. So, the American Legion Auxiliary. Do you include their information on your 990? No. The American Legion is tax exempt under IRS Code Section 501C19. They are a 501C19. However, they have a different group exemption number. So your auxiliary units are going to have to file their own 990 returns. How about the Sons of the American Legion and the American Legion Riders? Do they fall under your 990? Yes, they do, because they are programs of the American Legion. So unless you have gone through the application process to get them tax exempt status on their own, they are a program of your post and should be using your post EIN number, and your post should be including their activity in your financial statements and in your returns with the IRS. Any questions on that? Any other IRS questions? I know everybody's eyes are glossed over and thinking, man, why did I take this job? All I wanted to do was send kids to Boy State. All right, we're going to move on to sales tax.
John, can I just interject something?
Sure.
5 years ago, when I was department commander, I probably received 15 letters from the National Judge Advocate because the posts were trying to get reinstated because they didn't file their 990 in. And the letter came back saying, nothing we can do, you've got to reinstate it. I know one post that cost them around $450, another post cost them over $750 in penalties and fees. So it is very important if you're gonna get reinstated. Now, another thing was, a guy told me, if you lose that non-profitability, if you own property, you could be taxed, property tax in the state of Iowa. So that's another very important thing, that you need to make sure that your post, or any property you own, that you are still a non-profit, considered a non-profit organization through the IRS and the state of Iowa. Otherwise, if you have, the state comes back and goes, you owe us property taxes for the last 5, 6, 7 years. You wanna make sure, this is a very, very important thing, that non-profitability, not just in the American Legion, if you are in any other organization, you know, all nonprofits have to file it. Just a little thing that, you gotta make sure this gets done.
Thank you, Jim. Moving on to sales tax. If your post is required to remit sales tax, so if you're selling any taxable goods or service from an Iowa location, you must have a sales tax permit. And you can go to tax.iowa.gov or contact the Iowa Department of Revenue to learn those application procedures to get a sales tax permit. So if your post is operating in a bar, you got to have a sales tax permit. And I'm going to give you some other special circumstances in just a little bit. Iowa sales taxes are paid and filed quarterly. Anyone selling taxable goods or services from an Iowa location must obtain a sales tax permit. And then we're going to talk a little bit about consumer use tax. So, sales tax. The sale is made from an Iowa location, and the delivery of product occurs in Iowa, or the service is performed in Iowa. Those are all subject to sales tax. It's collected by the retailer, paid by the final consumer, and remitted to the state by the retailer. Now, they have also expanded this now in Iowa law that other businesses in other states can collect Iowa sales tax and remit it to the state of Iowa. What is one example of that we probably all use? Emblem Sales. I wasn't going to use Amazon. I'm going to use an American Legion entity as my example, not Amazon. Emblem Sales. Emblem Sales can now collect sales tax when you place orders with them. Say your post is doing your spaghetti supper to raise money for your scholarship program, and you put on that sign that the meals are $7. Is that subject to sales tax? Yes, it is. If you put free will donation, is it subject to sales tax? No, it is not, because it becomes a donation. Can you put a suggested amount? No. If you put a suggested amount, it's subject to sales tax. So keep that in mind when you're doing your fundraisers. You may need to have a sales tax permit to submit sales tax for those sales at your post if you are putting a set amount on those functions. Yes?
Is that including raffle tickets?
Raffle tickets is gambling, and all gambling is subject to sales tax. And you must have a gambling license to perform a raffle. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too if I don't run out of time here. What's that?
You can have mine.
I can have yours. Use tax. So use tax is when you're buying from an out-of-state vendor and you're an Iowa purchaser. So it used to be the things you bought from Emblem Sales, not Amazon. That when you bought those things and brought them into Iowa and you used them in Iowa, technically you were supposed to pay sales tax on them if Emblem Sales did not charge you sales tax, because that is consumer use tax. And that's why, especially with the growth of online sales, almost all online retailers are now charging you sales tax, unless you ask them not to. And what would be an example of that? Well, I'm going to go back to Emblem Sales, not Amazon, and we're going to talk about when you say how many of your posts participate in the Flag Rewards program? Quite a few of you. There's a couple of ways that you can participate in that Flag Rewards program with Emblem Sales. You can give when your customers, so to speak, can call directly into Emblem Sales and say, I want this purchase to be credited to my post, and your post gets credit for those sales, and they pay the sales tax directly to Emblem Sales, and everybody's happy and you don't have to do anything with it. There are also posts out there that are selling flags. So they will buy the flags from Emblem Sales. They will use their Iowa sales tax permit to purchase those flags without paying Emblem Sales tax. And then when they sell them in their community, they collect the sales tax and remit that to the state of Iowa. So if your post has done that to where you didn't pay Emblem Sales the sales tax and you're paying the tax on the back end from the consumer, what happens if the flag outside of the post is all tattered and you grab a flag out of inventory and run it up the pole? You didn't pay sales tax on it, so you got to pay use tax on it, technically, because you have used it as the consumer and sales tax has not yet been paid on it. So that's kind of what the example I like to use, because it's a very real life situation for a lot of our posts. Gambling. Everybody loves gambling. Oops. Social and charitable gambling. To conduct charitable gambling activities, a nonprofit organization will first need to obtain a charitable gambling license. And that has to be done through the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals. So if you are doing any charitable gambling in your post, you will need a license. And if you look on page 12, we talk about the different licenses, and I'm going to get into a little bit of detail on those in just a little bit with a chart. But you can get a 14-day license, you can get a 90-day license, a 180-day license, a 1-year license, a 2-year license, a bingo at a fair or festival license, and a very large raffle license. And what you can do on each of those licenses varies. Social gambling is when the guys are sitting around the post playing cards. You know, if they're sitting there playing cards, and I don't care if they're just sitting around playing euchre for a quarter a spot, that is social gambling, and you do have to have a license for that. And the requirements for that social gambling license is different if you have liquor and beer and if you do not have liquor and beer. So with the social gambling, that's going to include your games like euchre, heart, pitch, pinochle, gin rummy, poker, cribbage, pepper, darts, billiards. And it does allow you to conduct sports betting pools as well. And it's issued by the Department of Inspections and Appeals. And it's a 2-year license, and it costs $150. And for non-alcohol allowed, you can do euchre, hearts, pitch, all of those things. It does not allow for sports betting pools, and that license is for 2 years and costs $100. The following activities are not permissible under a social gambling license: raffles, bingo, poker tournaments, poker runs, roll of the day, bookmaking, or any casino-style games. We also have in there the definition of the sports betting pools and what those are allowed. It gives a definition of the amusement concessions. I'm not going to go into detail on all of those. We had the question about, is there sales tax on raffles? Yes, there is. Because if you have a raffle, you have to have a gambling license. And if you have a gambling license, you have to have a sales tax permit. They're all tied together. So gambling receipts are subject to Iowa sales tax, even for nonprofit organizations. If you look at pages 14 and 15, we're going to talk on those. So page 15 is going to give you the definitions of what is outlined in the chart on page 14. And it tells you what you can do with each of those licenses. So if you look across the top, you'll see that 2-year license and what you can do. 1-year license and what you can do. 180-day, the 90-day, 14-day, and the bingo at a fair. So if you use that chart, you can look at the top and see which type of license it is and follow down the left side, and it'll tell you what type of gambling is permitted with that license. And then if you look at the following page, it's going to give those definitions. So a very large raffle is anything more than $100,000, but not more than $200,000 if the prize is real property. A large raffle is anything more than $10,000, but not more than $100,000. Yes?
How would we handle 50-50 raffles?
50-50 raffles, it really depends on what you think your anticipated sales are going to be. I mean, the 50-50 raffles are still subject to the maximum prize payout. So when you look at the definition of these raffles and whether it qualifies as a small, a very small, large, or very large, it's about prizes. So it's all about what prize money you are giving out.
Is that including the half 50 that the winner wins? You have to pay tax on that too.
You have to pay taxes on gross receipts. Sales tax is paid on gross receipts, not the profit, because it's not income tax, it's sales tax. So sales tax is paid on the gross receipts, and the type of license you have depends on the prize offered, the value of the prize offered. So I'll give you an example, and it's something that we talked about this morning in the foundation breakfast. One of the things, may I speak about it, Dave? Is that all right? One of the things that the foundation is looking at doing is a raffle that would have lottery tickets as the prize money, scratchers. What is that value of the scratcher if it's not scratched? Whatever the purchase value was. So we would only have to have a license applicable to what the purchase value of that prize is. Even though someone may win $100,000, that ticket only costs us 10. So it's the value of the prize that determines what license you need to have. Yes?
So on a 50-50 raffle, 100 people participate, $1 a chance. You're talking tax on $100. No. Yeah, tax on $100.
Sales tax on $100.
And the person who wins the 50 would have to pay the tax on that 50, and that would be, you know, or at least you would already have tax out of the other 50.
Right, you're gonna take the tax out of your profits. You're not going to charge sales tax to the recipient of the prize. You're paying sales tax out of what you sold for tickets. So you have to build sales tax into your ticket price essentially. But I don't think anyone out there is gonna charge $1.06 for a raffle. You're gonna consider that $1 for the raffle. But the big thing when it comes to gambling, I'd like you to turn to page 16. And that's really the things that you're going to need to have in place before you apply for a gambling license, whether it be social gambling or charitable gambling. We've given you a checklist here. So you're going to have to go to the Department of Inspection and Appeals website, and you're going to have to complete either that charitable gambling application or that social gambling application. For the charitable gambling, you're also going to need to have a state sales tax permit. They will not issue you a gambling license until you have your sales tax permit. So make sure that you have that. Then you're going to have to pay the appropriate fee. You got to make sure that you don't have any delinquent gambling reports, or they will not issue you a new one. And there again is that IRS determination letter. The Department of Inspection and Appeals is going to require you to provide that IRS determination letter, and that's why we talked about that in the first section and how you can request that from the National Judge Advocate's Office. Because anytime you apply for a gambling license, you have to have that form. So if you are doing raffles, that is why I told you to keep it in that top right desk drawer, so you have it readily accessible, so when you apply for a gambling license, you know where it is. And then for social gambling, you're going to have to complete the social gambling application. If you're doing like a sports pool, you're going to have to provide them a sample, and actually on the application they'll give you samples that you can use when you're developing your sports betting pools for, you know, say the Super Bowl, World Series, whatever you may be doing. And then you have to pay the license fee, and of course that's all made payable to the Department of Inspections and Appeals. Now, I didn't cover it in this presentation in much detail, but what happens when you're done with your gambling, after you've had your raffle? You do have to complete a gambling report. So you have, not only do you have to turn in that sales tax and pay that sales tax quarterly, but there is a gambling report that you have to complete. And I believe that's annually, correct, Teresa? The gambling report? Yeah. Annually, you have to complete a gambling report of your gambling activities. And the two last things I want to touch on, and Dave talked about this one a little bit this morning, is the insurance. There's different types of insurance coverages your post is going to want to make sure you have in place for your own protections. General liability. Does your post need a general liability policy if you don't own the building? Yes, you do, because you're still a business entity and someone can sue you. So make sure that you have a general liability policy even if you do not own real property. You may also want to consider umbrella liability, which is excess liability coverage above the basic limits. So in case that basic policy gets exhausted, you have an umbrella policy that gives you additional coverage. If you do own real property, if you do own buildings, vehicles, real estate, make sure that you have property insurance for those, and not only for the physical structures, but make sure that you're insuring your contents and make sure you're reviewing that. I always say it's a good idea to review your insurance policies at least every 5 years. Have your agent come in and look at your property so that you know what it would take to replace those contents should they become destroyed. And another thing I recommend is take photos of your property. Take photos so that when that loss does occur, say that derecho comes through. Whoever heard of a derecho until 2020? 2020 was a wonderful year. When that derecho comes through and takes things out of your post, if you have pictures of what you had in there and what needs to be replaced, it's going to be a lot easier to get that insurance coverage for the contents if you are able to prove what was actually in the building. Also, any posts that have a liquor license, of course, make sure you have that dram shop insurance, and you're going to need that to apply for the license. And of course, any workers' compensation or special events coverage that you may need. Now, what do we talk about when we say special events coverage? At my post, we do have a liability policy and we have an umbrella liability policy. And every year, the town has a town celebration. We make sure that our liability insurance covers that special event. Now, what if we didn't have those policies in place? We just get a certificate of insurance like Dave spoke of, and we name the city as an additional insured, and we make sure the event is covered. But what if you don't have those policies in place and you're going to have a special event that you require that type of coverage for? You can buy special policies just for events. So you can get a policy that just covers that special event, and it's only in effect for that time period of that event. And there's a lot of specializing companies that are out there that will do that type of insurance coverage for you. But make sure you and your members are protected when you have that insurance coverage. And the last thing we're going to touch on just briefly here is the use of the American Legion emblem. Use of the American Legion emblem, the emblem is copyrighted and trademarked. So is the name of the American Legion. Anytime you use that name and emblem of the American Legion, you have to make sure that you are permitted to do so. And I always like to use this as a rule of thumb. If you're going to go out and have a banner made for your post that you can use in parades, or you want to have a table cover made so that when your post is at a local community event, you can advertise the American Legion. You want to get those made. You have to have permission to use the emblem on that type of merchandise. Yes, you do, because someone is going to manufacture that product and you are going to pay that person to manufacture it, and in order to reproduce the emblem, they have to have permission to reproduce the emblem. So if you're sitting at your computer at home and the post needs some stationery and you've got a high quality color printer, and so you create a letterhead on your computer with the American Legion emblem and you print out 50 copies that your post can use for letterhead. Do you need to have permission to do that? No, you don't, because you're not paying someone to reproduce the emblem. That is probably the best rule of thumb to use, is that if you are paying someone to reproduce the emblem, you probably need to get permission to do so. And you can get that form in your officer's guide. You can get that form on the National American Legion website, and they also have an online form on the National American Legion National American Legion website, and you just search for use of the emblem and it will pull it right up for you. I strongly suggest using the online form because your turnaround time is so much faster. You can typically get it in a day or two and get the permission to use that if you have everything that needs to be included with that application. Because what's going to happen is they're going to send an email to me telling me to go in. I have to sign in through a portal, go in and review it, and as soon as I click that the department approves it, National typically sends out the letter. Now, when you are reproducing the emblem, make sure you are using approved artwork. I have seen some American Legion emblems on merchandise, on caps, on shirts that looks nothing like the real American Legion emblem. If you are going to use those type of things and pay someone to produce them for you, make sure you are using a valid American Legion file to create that emblem. There are electronic files available on National's website, and you can also request the higher resolution files from Emblem Sales, and they will send them out to you with the request to reproduce the emblem. So you can get that artwork from them. But anytime you're going to use that emblem, the big thing is you got to have permission to do so unless you're really doing it yourself. Now say you've got someone in town, the local beer distributor is going to make up a bunch of posters for your post. They're not going to charge you anything, but they're going to do the printing of it and reproduce that emblem. Do you need permission to do so? Yes, because you're really not doing that yourself. So make sure that when you have those occasions, and we absolutely want you to display the American Legion emblem when you do these type of events, but make sure you're using the right emblem, and make sure you have permission to do so if you're having someone else reproduce that emblem for you. Any questions? I went a little bit over my time, Dave. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, but oh, you're not next? Yes, Jim. It has to have a post signature on it. So there is a place on the application where you're going to list that manufacturer's information and that manufacturer's point of contact, but it's also going to have a place in there where the post has to sign off that they are the ones requesting it be done. Now, another option you have, especially when it comes to customized merchandise, is through Emblem Sales. Emblem Sales has a number of authorized vendors, and these are vendors that are already pre-approved to reproduce the emblem. They have a number of t-shirt companies, even Jostin's Rings. I mean, there's a full list of manufacturers that you can go on to emblem.legion.org and see a list of manufacturers that are pre-approved to reproduce the emblem. And when you buy products, American Legion emblemized products from those companies, you do not have to request permission because they are already pre-approved. And like I said, it's on the Emblem Sales website where you can find those. And there's several t-shirt manufacturers on there, a lot of different companies that are already pre-approved. So you can use those companies when you're doing those things. Or you can do special orders through Emblem Sales too and have them produce those items on your behalf. And then you don't have to request that permission because they have taken care of that for you. Any other questions?
On your social gambling permit, it states that your gambling is to be done where the physical address is on that certificate. So like our post, 1108 Main Street. 4th of July, we have a drawing at the city park, and we do bingo on the 2nd. I applied for that 14-day license for $15. And I put down the address of the city park, I'm legal. And so when we have a drawing at the city park on the 9th and 4th, we're legal. That permit is only good for where your bingo and that is being held, whatever that address is on your normal permit. So if you're gonna move it, you're gonna have bingo someplace else, you need to apply for that 14-day permit.
You know, we used to teach this class and oftentimes we'd get a question, well, can I get away with this? Can I get away with that? I don't get as many of those questions anymore because my answer is always was and always will be, I'm not going to advise you how to circumvent the law. You know, we are an organization that believes in law and order, so do your best to make sure that you're in compliance with all laws and rules and regulations, and don't try to cut corners because it's just not worth it. Thank you very much, and thank you all for assuming leadership positions in the organization.
Thank you, John. Okay, our next set of training is membership processing. This will be Ann Hake and Jennifer Munsroom.
On my Gmail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't worry. I did it online this time.
And we're on to membership.
And the membership. And a quick answer is helpful. Also want to thank you guys for being really patient for me as I'm learning all sorts of things about membership. It's not even been a year yet, so I'm trying my hardest. And keep asking me questions that I can keep looking up because I'm learning a lot and I'm really happy to do so. So today we're going to mostly focus on My Legion. I know there are going to be changes coming, but we'll focus on processing My Legion currently, but other forms that you guys at the post level need to do. And hopefully at the end we'll have a few minutes for some questions. Okay? Awesome. So we're going to start with some of these forms that you need to complete every year from the post. We want these things at department to make our jobs easier. So the first one is that post officer report. Ooh, lots of things to click. So where does this form come from? You're usually going to get this with your membership packet in the summertime when you get those new year cards and rosters, along with the membership processing manual, all of those things. And we ask that those be completed and back to us by September 15th every year. Yay! Oh, also I should add, even if there are no changes, please send them back.
You don't want them filled out this time?
I would like them all filled out completely and sent back to me, even if there are no changes. Let's make this really specific. So, all right, the next one is the post data form. So this one is going to be on legal size paper, really long. This one's actually coming out pretty soon. It kind of comes out in the spring. We'll have that coming up pretty quick. And we want all of these completed and returned to us by April 15th. This is very important. These are things specifically about your post and tells us things. So I got a lot of coolers. So we got a couple of the big things you really want to keep in mind on here are things like the post billing address and the post dues billing address. So you want to make sure, we really want this back by April 15th because that post dues billing address is what gets put on your renewal notices that go to your members. So we want to make sure that's accurate because otherwise, if somebody has passed away or somebody's moved, you may not be getting the dues back to the right place. The next big one on there as well is how much the dues are for your post. So if you decide at the post level, your post is increasing their dues, get this, you can fill this out on this form in the spring, get this back to us, and that way when the renewal forms do go out, it's reflected correctly and you don't have old payments coming in. So the next one is the direct renewal form. This gets sent out in the spring. And this one, so it's sent with the post data form. And we also ask that this be sent back to us by April 15th. So this one is really important because this tells you what what renewal notices you are getting. So those last 4 are mandatory. You're gonna get all of, if you haven't paid, you get those. But the first 2 are ones that the post can select. So the first one's July, first one's in October. You can pick one, you can pick the second one, or you can pick both of them. But it's required that the post has at least one of those selected. Even if it doesn't change from year to year, send it in so we have the most accurate records. So great, next question would be, where do I find these forms? Because that happens. So a lot of these forms are mailed out to you. We're sending the one form in the membership packet. These other forms we're going to get out to you. But then the next thing, too many things here. So the next thing that you have to think about is what if something changes? What if we ask for the post officer form by September 15th and it's December and you have a new adjutant? Well, you can go first to the Membership Processing Manual, Volume 1, and towards the back there are samples of all of these forms, so you can always fill that out and get that into us. The other place you can find that is at the department's website, so ialegion.org/resources, and it's under Post, Forms, or Membership. You'll go to either one of those to find the forms we've talked about. And those, if you make a change in the middle of the year, if you feel like emailing it to me, you can do so, or you can just send it in by mail. Sorry, I was not looking at my notes. All right, so the next thing we're going to move into is My Legion. So I know that some changes are coming to My Legion, and we're all extremely excited about what those changes are going to be, although we don't know too many details yet, not as many as maybe we'd like. But we all know that processing membership is not online, is not going away. That's still going to be something that is available online. So maybe if your post is not currently processing membership online, as we move to a new system, it'd be a great time to switch from paper to the internet. Woo! But a couple of things that we know are, so a couple things to really keep in mind and things that are changing. So one thing that is changing already with My Legion, the sign on. You can already members can go on and start signing up with the new system. The big change is with that for the post is going to be the access. So currently, the post adjutant's the one, they're submitting a form, they get the email, they get the code to get in. But in the future, everybody's going to have an individual login and an individual password, individual email, your email to log in. What you are granted access to is based on your role. So the post adjutant will have certain things, commander has things, so it depends on what your role is. So your members won't see everything. You doing something at the post officer level means you can see certain things. And as we go forward with the new changes in My Legion, you definitely want to make sure that you're paying attention to some of the training opportunities that are being available to you. And a lot of these are going to be put out through Nationals. So you can go on legion.org/training, Nationals website. Specifically, I do want to draw your attention to what I noticed the other day online. There is a training Tuesday. So these are trainings that they put out at the end of the last Tuesday every month. And the one coming up on February 23rd is about updates to membership processing. So I will try to watch that, and I encourage all of you to also check that out with me, and we'll learn a lot together. Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Monsrud, and she's going to show you how to process membership at the post level. So if you haven't seen it before, we're going to show you how awesomely easy it is and why you should be switching over. So, Jennifer.
Thank you, Anne. Let me just take a second and I'll get logged into My Legion here. So for those of you who haven't been to My Legion before, this is what the page that comes up after you log in looks like. To process membership online, on the menu on the left, you just click on Process Membership. But I can't see the screen out here. So you can see that I've processed membership quite a few times through My Legion over the last couple of years. Can you guys hear me all right with having to turn? Do you want me to hold it up or anything? No, it's fine. So the first step you're gonna have to do after you log in is manage your payment method, because it's gonna make an electronic transfer from your bank account to National. So you need to have your checking account information available, the routing number and the account number, to enter into here so that it can make an automatic withdrawal. It'll also ask you for an email address, and the confirmation for each withdrawal will come to that email address after you submit an online transmittal. So you just enter your information in here and click save. So your first process will be held for a few days so that it can verify your banking information, make sure you've entered everything correctly. If it's not correct, it'll send you a message stating that and that you need to update your information. Once all that is taken care of, to process online, click over here on the right on edit, and you can see that this $35.25 is the amount that will be sent to to National for each member that we transmit. There's a couple of different ways to enter your members' information. So you can see I have one started on this batch. If you click edit, you can change, some of his mailing address information, all of this stuff. We're gonna save this one because we want to transmit this member. I find the easiest way to transmit membership is to type in the membership number. My post is large, so in July and August, I get 250 renewals in during those 2 months probably. And so I have a scanner that I'll scan the barcode and it will punch in all these numbers for me so I don't have to do it. But it couldn't be easier. You just you take your 3-part membership card after you've taken the member card off and sent it to them. And you take the member ID number and you just type it in. And you can see down here at the bottom.
They had them up until you got the last number on there.
Till I got the last number on there, sorry.
There you go.
There, it'll come up with some suggestions. The number I typed in happened to be Martin Escobedo that's at the bottom. So it won't let you transmit the same guy twice, or the same member 2 times. Once he's already renewed for this year, you can't do it again online. So that's a great way to check against your records that you've already sent that member in. So here's our next member, Cody. Come over here to the right and click renew. And it'll bring up his mailing address, his email address, whatever information they have for the member online. And it'll bring up his eligible renewal years. Now, if he didn't pay last year, it'll say 2020 there. And if you got enough money from that member, you can click both boxes. This member paid last year, so I'll click 21 and then click renew. And if you scroll down, you can see his name was added to the list. So you just keep building your list. You can also, if you clear this member ID box, if you've been using it that way, if for some reason you don't have that member ID number, you just know his name, you can type in his name. And I don't know why it didn't come up with that. Maybe I didn't hit enter.
Did you hit the space bar?
I don't know. Milo Nelson.
Last name, first name?
Oh, see, because I put it in backwards. I put his first name in as his last name. You can see I don't use this method. I use the other method. Thanks, Ann. So there it populates the list of possibilities again. It's the same process. You go over to renew, click the eligible year, and click renew again. So now I've completed the list that I have. And I like to go through and just bounce these names off the 2-part cards that I have in front of me. If they match, then I'll click Submit Batch. If you have a transfer member that's paid for your dues at your post, you can also transmit them this way. click here, and it'll ask you if they're a new member or if you transfer in somebody else. So if they're a new member, you just go in, click new, and fill in all their information. It's really that easy. You don't have to handwrite it out on the new card and mail it to Ann, which is, you know, I'm sure they're impossible to read. I know mine are.
You can do 729s that way too as well?
If they're unpaid for the current year, you can. If they are paying dues in your post, so if they paid for 2020 and they want to transfer to your post and are paying for 2021, yes, you can do it that way. If they're already paid for 21, you have to do the member data form and send it to Ann. So they have to be unpaid for the current member year to use an online transfer in.
They haven't got that part figured out yet.
Well, some of these guys are like 2018, 2019, and we're getting stuff, and I appreciate the stuff you're sending me, I really do, for the 729s, but we've been doing it all on paper, and, you know, on member data form and sending them back to you.
I mean, you can still submit a lot of this work on member data forms, but even if it's somebody who last paid in 2018, you could probably go in here and find them in the system. The system has all these members, you're just trying to locate them at that point. So you'd be able to, you know, still using that function, if you have their member ID and their name, even if it's been a few years, the system might recognize who they are and be able to pull them in there.
As long as they got the cash.
As long as they're paying, yeah, that's right.
So at this point, if your list matches the member cards that you have in front of you, you click Submit Batch. And this is just kind of the confirmation to make sure that this is where the email is going to go. That's my email address. It's telling you the date that it's going to withdraw your checking account and the amount it's going to withdraw. If that's all correct, you can put a new email address in here if this is not correct, but if it's all correct, hit Submit. And that's all there is to it. You're done. You can leave if you decide you need to come back to your list and you want to add a few more later, or you need to check on something and come back. You can leave it open for a few days. What is it?
14.
How many?
14.
14 days you can leave it open before it'll cancel it out and you have to start over. So if you need, you're not sure you want to submit right away, you have time to go and double check. And the process for the SAL is exactly the same.
Jim, you can do this out of your regular checking account now, or does it take a
Absolutely.
special account?
Yeah, the question was, can you do this out of your regular checking account? And yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
When it was first set up, though, you had to have a special account or something, didn't you?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Are there any other questions to processing membership online? It's really, really simple.
I want to go back to 729 for a second. He mentioned somebody who last paid in 2018 and now wants to reestablish membership. So you're just going to click on 2021?
Yes.
If he wants to have continuous, he would have to pay each of those vacant years.
That's correct, yes.
Now, another question on that. Before, we always had to go back to 18, 19, and 20 and get those cards and fill those out. Do we have to do that now?
So what I've been telling people, thank you so much, Alexa. Hang out here too. So what I've been telling people, consider when you use My Legion, we can only process the current membership year and the previous year. So right now we're working with 2021, and I can go back in, or the post can go back in and do 2020. That's really what we've got. So if they do pay you for, that person who paid 2018 is also paying 2019, we really don't have a way to take that money. I mean, don't just pay me directly either. That's not a good plan for any of you. So, but what you can do is the post will want to make record that they've made that payment, and you can submit then to me or use online and do 2020 and 2021. And do try to process 2020 before 2021 to try to make things easier. But then what you'll do is you can correct the years in My Legion, or you submit a member data form to me and I can update those continuous years for that member. Okay? Awesome.
And I don't have anything else unless you guys have more questions.
Because then I can go through a couple more things. Sorry.
We have a question in the audience.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah.
On a puffle, what does state get and what does the post get off that puffle?
What the post is going to get is going to vary a lot depending on when that person signed up and what the dues portions were at that time. I'm trying to remember all of it. Sorry. So that will vary greatly depending upon what the post gets back will vary greatly upon which when they signed up. So is that good? Couple other questions, especially with online. Couple things you might be wondering about was what to do with those cards. So Jennifer was showing you your 2-part cards that usually you're sending into department. I mean, what do I do with those? So really, I do not need them. I do not need all of your paperwork. You will want to file those away so that you have record. Make note on there that they have paid, but that you don't have to send them. Save some postage. And then the next question that you might be thinking is, what happens to my credit at department? So each post you end up getting a credit if you have Puffle members who pay online, if you send me a paper transmittal and overpay on accident, various ways that the post gets credit. What happens to that credit? Well, if you want to use that credit, you have to send in a paper transmittal, because our system for where the credit is and My Legion are not the same and they do not talk. You cannot use that credit to process membership online. So you could send me a paper transmittal, be old school, or you can elect to get your credit back quarterly in a check. New this year, we hope you sign up for us. So that way you don't have to worry about what's happening with that credit. We're happy to get that back to you quarterly. So, and you'll kind of see that, if we try to send out statements so you see how much you have. And then, I'm just gonna go through this really fast too. Last thing, it might be the question of, where do I go if I need help? What if I have questions? What if something's weird? So one good place to check first is going to be that membership processing manual. There is volume 1, there is volume 2. Volume 2 is specifically for the online processing. These may be revised in the future, but definitely check there when you're processing membership. Another place you can turn to, you can always call National's customer service people. They're super nice, they're super helpful, at least to me, and they'll be able to help you out. So if you have somebody who wants to be a Puffle member, you're like, how much does this cost? You can always call them. Always your district leadership. Remember, they're there to help you as well, and I love to hand off questions to other people, so I'm sure they'll be able to help. But then finally, of course, and I mean, I love to help you guys. That's part of the reason I took this job, is I like to help people. So definitely contact me. You can email me, you can call me. Got both the numbers up there. If you need a card, let me know. I've got a few. So that is, that is all I have right now.
Questions?
Any more questions?
Not a question, Ed, but you were saying that you could call customer service and pay them for it. You can get that credit application right on.
You can get all of that information online as well. That is very correct. But I know I still get phone calls sometimes with people asking that. So
I take it, if I've got their birth date, I will go and print up a paid up for life and say, hey, look, you can do this.
Exactly. So members, if they're looking to be a paid up for life member, you can always have them go online. National, I believe you can find it on National's website. There's even a link on My Legion. So there's one of the things on the side says Puffle, and you can click on that and it'll redirect you. And you just need to make sure you have the member's name, ID, and possibly birth date if they don't have that in the system already. So.
And they do have to be a member in good standing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Can do that. Thank you.
I was gonna tell you to leave the door, Kevin.
Oh, well, sorry. Well, still there, still there.
Okay, our next is CPRs, Consolidated Post Reports.
So here we go with something that you hear about every year. You know, my last other presentation, I got to talk about something entirely new. This presentation, I get to talk about something that you've heard over and over and over before. But what I'm going to do is present it to you in a little different fashion. Is that down here in the... There it is.
Got it.
So we talk about the Consolidated Post Report. And when we bring it up, you start to hear some of the commonly asked questions about the Consolidated Post Report. Questions like, why do we do this every year? Is this information really used anywhere? What good does it do for me and my post? And when you hear those questions, that tells you that there's an attitude out there in the posts that this is a waste of time and a waste of my effort, and I could be doing something more important. But I want to try to convince you with this presentation of the importance of the Consolidated Post Report and what that information it can be used for. But these are the common answers to those questions. Congress needs to know what we're doing, and so we all need to file that report so that National can compile it and Congress can get a summary of everything the American Legion does. And the department awards are based on our answers. That's how our posts are recognized for awards. And Department and National need these reports to judge our activities. Well, those are good answers, but those aren't very motivating. Outside of that, awards maybe, if you are really competitive and you want some of those awards, then that becomes a motivation factor. But for a lot of folks, it does not. So what else can it be used for? What good is it? Why should you spend the time to collect all that data and get it into Department and National? Because all that data can be used to tell our members what we are doing, what their post is doing, and why they then should remain a member of that post because they're proud. They can be proud of what their post is doing. If we don't tell our members what we do, where are they going to find it out? Why are they going to care when it comes to renewal time? And so that's what I think the Consolidated Post Report can really be used for, to provide information to our members about the activity of the posts that they are supporting. About 3 years ago, National started something called a Membership Impact Report. We never had that before, and it was motivated by the feeling that National is expected to tell, posts are expected to tell National what the posts are doing, but there was no expectation for National to tell the post and the membership what was happening in National. We'd hear about it in bits and pieces, but there was nothing like a reverse Consolidated Post Report, where a compilation of data from National was submitted back to the members. And so that started. That first Why can't I find a mouse?
We can see it.
You can see it, I can, all right. There it is. So that first publication of these membership impact reports was made in November of 2018, and you may have seen them in your Legion magazine. There's one in every monthly issue of the American Legion magazine, a 2-page impact report. This was the first one. Came out in January, came out in November of 2018, talked about the Rose Bowl float, talked about quite a number of things that National was doing that you would never have heard about otherwise. $204,000 worth of TFA grants that went out in that month. You know, things that you really use to be proud of the American Legion and what's being done. That was the beginning of these membership impact reports. By the time we got into January of this year, those reports had transitioned some, because now they weren't just talking about what National had done. They were beginning to talk about some of the things that were happening out there in the posts. Buddy checks from Nevada Post number 76 and how many they had accomplished. There's another one down here from a Michigan Post. Where do you suppose they got that data? How did National find out about that? Somebody from the Post called in, or National called the Post? I doubt it. National found out about those things from the Consolidated Post report. And so it turned into a circle where data gets fed from the Post up to National, and then some of that data is used to feed back down to the full membership. And so that Consolidated Post report turns into a membership tool. Are we doing the same thing? Do we follow that example, and when we put that data together from our post, do we tell our membership what their post did over the last year? I think too often that we look at that Consolidated Post report as going from the Post leadership to Department and National, and we never think about that Consolidated Post report going back to the members. You know, there's a number of ways that can be done in large posts. Many of the larger posts do a monthly newsletter, and so they can talk about their activities to their membership. As you get down to the smaller posts, maybe a monthly or even a quarterly newsletter, but an annual report to your members may be the most important thing you can do to retain them as members, by telling them what your post has done. Create some pride in those folks so that they're more apt to stay members. And when would be a good time to send this annual report out? Oh, let's see, what, do you think about the first time the first renewal notice is coming out? So that they get those two fairly close together? So that's, I think, the most important use of the Consolidated Post report. And that, I think, is the reason why we should really spend the time to fill that Consolidated Post report out completely. Not just in whatever comes to our mind the night we sat down with it to fill it out. I think we need to spend the time to go back through the year's calendar with our post and fill that out completely, because that's the report back to our members, as well as the report to Department and National. That's the traditional way to file. You get a paper copy, you sit down with it, you start to check boxes, You start to fill in numbers for dollars, numbers for hours. And then you mail a paper copy off to headquarters. You keep one. You keep the carbon copy, the bottom one, the one you can hardly read. And you send the others to headquarters, because one's going to department and data's going on to national. But there's a better way to do that now. Because if you're going to do that paper copy, you have to have, for example, how many funerals did your post do this year? You have to have the final answer before you write anything on that paper copy, because you got no way to go back and add to it. Through mylegion.org, you can get online. You can start filling out the consolidated post report in September. And you can go back and add to it as time goes by. Once you get to the end of the year and you start to get within 30 days of the deadline, that's the time to finalize it and submit it to national. And then national will forward it on to department. So let's look at that for a minute. We'll go back to mylegion.org. I didn't know it would save passwords. That's maybe not the best idea in the world, but
You might have to put in your post username too, Dave. Does it show on departments? It defaults to mine.
oh, that's defaulting to department. And where's my? Now let's see if I got those both entered right. So you log in. Right down over here, you see an entry, a clickable link for consolidated post report. You hit that, it'll take you to this screen where you can see everything that's going to be on that paper copy. And where you can go in, you'll see that there's numbers already entered here. This is for our post, and we have already started filling it out, because there's things you already know, like last year's membership. Anytime you want to change something, and let's talk about Veterans Affairs, you simply click on that edit, and this window opens up so that you can enter into any of those boxes. When you're done, when you've made your changes, go ahead and click on update. It'll take you back here. I want to see something where yeah. Let's go to Americanism. We're sponsoring baseball teams. That's the number, that's the dollars that we have committed to that sponsorship. We're having trouble hearing you online. If that number changes, if we decide we need more money, we decide we need less money, I can simply go in there, change the number, up or down, doesn't matter. Click on update, and we now have an updated form. So you can keep, I don't have the number of funerals that our post does entered. I don't keep track of that month by month, because I know our Sergeant at Arms is doing that. And about the 1st to the 15th of May, he'll give us that number. But some of the other things that we do, I'll keep track of month by month, because at each post meeting, we'll lay a book out on the head table that our members can come up and enter in their volunteer hours that month, any donations they've made that month, And then I can take that book and I can update this form month by month as the year goes by. And that makes it much easier than trying to remember all of this stuff and pull all these numbers together at the end of the year. Now, is every post in here signed up with mylegion.org? Anybody that's not? Think about it. This is good. mylegion.org was kind of kludgy at the beginning. But they have taken comments from people around the country how to make it better, and they're working to make it better. And I think the more we can do to do things like this, the more time we can have to do other things for the American Legion and our community. Sir?
Who specifically would have access to this form on mylegion.org?
I'm sorry, I need to have you.
Who specifically would have access to that information on mylegion.org?
Which number of the post?
The way it's set up right now, the adjutant has control. The adjutant has control of the username and the password. I'm not going to tell you you should do it. I'm simply going to say that if you trust another member of your post, there's nothing that says you can't share your post's username and password. But it's a trust issue. You don't just want to hand it out to everybody. John?
And that is one of the things that is going to be changing. You heard Ann talk about that single sign-on, where every member is going to be able to use their own email address and their own password to sign into mylegion.org. You will have an administrator for your post that will be able to designate different levels of access. So you will be able to designate who has access to what within MyLegion. So if your Sergeant at Arms just needs to have access to names and phone numbers, you can provide that so he can call people up when you need to do military funeral honors, but he wouldn't have access to enter membership or change the consolidated post reports. So that is the direction that MyLegion is going. It's going to individualize access within the post, so it's not an all or nothing like it is now.
John, can you give John, do you have any idea how that's going to impact district level?
I don't.
Okay.
The other thing I'm going to tell you is that this form is designed to report data on our traditional American Legion programs. We all do things that are slightly different than traditional American Legion programs. We need to find ways to put that data in on this form too. And I'm going to call your attention down here to school awards, where it says our post has presented 475 school awards this year. That's not the school award that you see that you could purchase through Emblem Sales. What that is an academic letter from an academic letter program that we do in conjunction with the Ames High School, and we awarded 475 of those. And so I have taken the freedom to call that a school award, because I think it's something that needs to be known about. I think it's something that deserves to be on the report. It's just that there's not quite the exact right place to put it. So I bent it a little. I think you need to think about that when you're filling out your report. Your post does things in your community because your community needs it that don't fall exactly under one of the traditional American Legion programs. This box. You can fill out a summary report, and this is where our Americanism Awards come from, really, and our selections for Department Children and Youth Awards come from, is the summary reports that our posts have filled out in this box? Something special they've done? Something they really want more than just a number of hours or a number of dollars to be known? But what will drive you absolutely nuts is that you're very limited on how much you can enter into this box. Last year, I put in a summary report of that academic letter program that we do. And I went to save it, and they told me and the error message came back that I was too long. So I cut it. And I went to save it. And I got an error message that said I was still too long. That happened one more time before I finally got short enough. You're going to have to get really creative on how to do a short summary. And I'm hoping that's something that National will address, but don't let that stop you from filling out that little box. If you do something special, if you do something that really you think really deserves recognition, fill out that summary box. And again, that's something else that you can go back and update it as time passes. When you are done, and only when you are done, click on Save and Submit. Don't make a mistake and click on Save and Submit thinking that saves it so that you can come back later and edit it. It does not. It saves it all right, and then it ships it on to National, and you're closed out. So right now, I don't have to do anything to save this data. I can simply log out of mylegion.org because that data is there, it's saved. So don't let that little box fool you. Because if it's the middle of March and you're updating and you accidentally click on Save and Submit, you're now done updating for the year. That's the annual report that's going into National. But what this does allow you to do is keep a copy of your report, a PDF, if you know what that is, something that you can print out, something that then you can use to take to your local media to let the community know what you're doing, something you can use to send to your membership at renewal time and make them a little bit more apt to write that renewal check. So that, I think, is really the more important usage for the Consolidated Post Report. Rather than just answering those initial questions, the Department and National need to have this data, and that's where the awards come from, and Congress needs to know. Those are good answers, but they're not the most important answer in my estimation. The most important answer is we use the Consolidated Post Report to compile the data to tell our members what we do. Is there any questions? Man, I love a perfect presentation.
Thank you, Dave. You're fine. Okay. Our next training will be developing a post-training program and Constitution and Bylaws by Roger Norfolk. Don't forget the giggly part, too.
First, I want to answer your question, Ed, because they'd addressed it. At the post level, the adjutant controls the account, and the adjutant will grant permissions. At district level and county level, the commander controls the account and will grant permissions. So it'll be based upon if that person has an account, and that account has to have a valid email address, which is part of what I'll address in my next class.
There you go. There's your sign. No Amazon.com there. Oh, you still there? Big guy still here, Brad. Can't talk like that.
Constitution and bylaws. There are many of you that may have seen my classes before on this. It's something I truly believe in, and there's hopefully some points that I will make during this that will make sense to you. So in 1964, if you went and bought a brand new car, you'd have an owner's manual in it that would tell you how to adjust the points. In 2021, you buy a brand new car, and that 8-volume user's manual that looks like the Encyclopedia Britannica will tell you not to drink the battery fluid. And unless you got a 5-year-old or an engineering degree, you are not going to be able to adjust that clock with that touch panel. Well, the Constitution and bylaws is a post or any level organization, really, owner's manual. I'm going to start by talking about it as a commander of post. Without the instruction manual, things may seem a little strange. You start talking to the old timers, and let's face it, when we take over command, there's almost always people who have been around longer than we have. Say, well, this is how we do that. No, that's not how it happens, and you've got no document that says how we do it. Post routinely misses suspenses because they haven't got things prepared. And sometimes your executive committee meetings turn into almost a brawl because you don't have something that tells it how to operate. Now we got to recognize every post in the Legion is unique. Each one has differences in how much money they've got, how many members they've got. I got an opportunity to visit the largest post in the United States, which is down in Florida, 6,500 members or something like that. They've got 4 different meeting rooms about this size spread throughout one building. The entire legacy run fit into one of those rooms. Great big post. They probably have a set of Constitution bylaws that covers a lot of things that the rest of us couldn't even imagine. No one size fits all checklist. So what's that mean for us today? Well, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to go out and find your Constitution and bylaws and read it, not scan it, not just skim through it, read it. If it says form and it should say from, fix it. Why? Because at some point, you're going to have to stand by that set of laws, that set of rules. And if your Constitution and bylaws is a little vague, you need to go up and you need to change it because it sets the main policies of the post. I'm going to talk about my post a lot and other posts that I have specific dealings with. My executive board, like many of them, well, they kind of sometimes overstep their bounds. And when they do that, unless you've got firm wording in your Constitution and bylaws how they're to operate, they don't know they're wrong because you may read them differently than they did. So you've got to make sure that it's together. What happens if you can't find them? Oh boy, isn't that fun. If you have a copy on file at department, how many copies do you think you have on file in department for all the posts?
Maybe 150.
Okay, that's not going to be near all of us, huh? So what happens when there's the flood of 2008 that hit Cedar Rapids and the posts that were inside that floodplain lost everything? They no longer have their Constitution and bylaws. What you need to do is figure out what you need to have in those, use that as a part of your comparison with what you've got, and to prepare if you need to do a rewrite. That's what this class is all about, is what should be there and how do I get there from here. So this is what the guidelines are. You should have your post organization, what officers are required. We're going to say required, and you realize that the Legion doesn't tell you how to suck eggs, right? They say this is what we think you should do. They don't say this is what you do. What authority does a district commander have when he comes into a post? Can he say, you need to change this? We can advise, but we don't tell how to do. So these requirements are what the guidelines tell us. The election or appointment of officers, and that's a big difference. In the way my post had been doing it, we elected the dog catcher. And they still do. My district, last fall conference, changed to where in electing every position that's in the staff, we elect the commander, the 3 vice commanders, and then 2 positions that are on department level. The rest are appointed by the commander. That's an efficient way to work. Is it the right way? I think it'll be the right way for us. Is that way you should do? You got to figure it out, but you need to spell it out. if your bylaws say it must be done by secret ballot, and we start looking at how we've got to do it in the world of the COVID, you got to figure out how you're going to put those in. So we'll get along to that in a minute. How elections are rerun and who runs them. Programs and program management. You're starting to see the scope of this. Facility operations and rules. Okay, now I'll give some on this one, because if you have a facility and it is under its own set of I draw that blank. It's also its own entity. What we do in the earlier class, we got to get it where they're recognized by the government.
Incorporated.
Incorporated, thank you. Got instructor's brain cramp up here. If they're their own incorporation, then they should have their own set of constitution and bylaws, and the one above it doesn't necessarily have to tell it how to do. But make sure that those are in your guidelines. What committees you have. The executive committee operating procedures, yes, this is one of my bugaboos, because there are things that happen that shouldn't. If there's no emergency, why would the executive board decide on it instead of it coming before the membership at a convention? And I've seen many errors where that has been done, and I would like to see that something that we as an organization made sure we had clear what guidelines we want for our executive board and what they want them to do. So the required officers, all right, we need a commander. We need some vice commanders. Why? Because the commander's not there. Who's going to run the meeting? We need an adjutant. We need a finance officer. We need a historian. We need a chaplain. We need a sergeant at arms and a service officer. And then anybody that posts things they need. All right, I got a post with 4 members. You think they got somebody in each of those positions? Probably not. What I frequently see is the adjutant is also the finance. I have seen in many places where the commander is also the chaplain. They haven't had a historian lately, and they don't really have a service officer. But for those 4, that's what makes sense. So the required officers are saying these are positions that are recommended to you. Do what you can to fill them. And sometimes you just get no one that steps up. So you have to then take that function and stick it someplace else. Post officers are elected or appointed in accordance with how your document says. The bylaws should also state how to replace someone who is no longer functioning or has resigned, etc. If you don't have that in there, then you'll find that you've appointed somebody and bylaws say it's supposed to be elected, and then sometime down the road, somebody's going to say that person's not really in that position, and you go into a little tight circle. Now, some of these slides I'm not going to read to you, so if you've gone to sleep, you're going to miss a couple things here. The main document I'm going to talk about today is from the Officer's Guide that every post gets a copy of when they get their initial membership materials at the beginning of our membership year. Inside of that is where I'm going to talk about most of the references we're going to use. Now one of the things I want to talk about today is where you can find things. All I did was go to legion.org, went into the search box, typed in Post Officer's Guide, and it brings it up there where it's a PDF that I can click on and save, and it's also searchable, where if you have the book in your hands, you search by turning page by page. So it's a little bit quicker to find some things for those who are electronically minded. The table of contents in this book is pretty broad. This is a one-size-fits-all sort of, kind of these guidelines. So it's got a lot of things that it's going to cover. The main thing that I'm going to cover today is on the appendix, where it has the American Legion Charter, that thing that Congress says, yes, you may be a Legion, the Constitution of the American Legion, and the bylaws of the American Legion. So this document gives you our highest level of directives. I'm sure that if I had asked at the beginning of this class for each person to write down what they thought they needed to do in order to build a constitution and bylaws, and 90% of you would say, find those above me to make sure I follow them. That's what this is boiling down to as well. So if you're really into it, you could start at the highest level and work your way down. It'll take you a while, but you can be more thorough and learn more about them. The second thing is, if you have to start from scratch, they have suggested forms in there that are almost so easy you can just go in and fill in the blanks. I have not gone to see if they have them in Word format where you can just download it and then fill in the blanks for real, if you'd have to type it in, do they?
They do not, but if anybody needs it in Word format, I can get it to you.
So to make things simpler, if you start by making your own and filling in the gaps, you're going to pay a lot more attention. I'm going to stop at this point and tell a story that's just happened to me recently. I had a post that was going to turn in their charter. They hadn't had a quorum since 2019. The commander had been in for just over a year, and he was so frustrated because they'd never been able to have a full meeting, because no quorum, you can't do any business. They wanted to turn in the charter. So I went and talked to him and said, okay, you need to send a letter out to all of your members to tell them you're going to have a meeting to make decisions on the history or the future of the post. Well, he couldn't get around to that. So I sent 122 letters out to everybody that was a current paid member, a 2020 paid member, and the 2 previous years before it, because they've been having some issues getting to that point. 122 letters, letters I sent out. I then asked for his constitution and bylaws. Took me several times to ask for them before he sent them to me. Said that, well, they were lost in the flood. They had taken the copy from my post, 298, and not even changed every place in it that the number was there. Part of the charters, part of their constitution bylaws still said 298. They had deleted the portion where it said quorum. Okay, I'm now at a quandary, because what's a legal quorum for this organization? So I did the best I could. I asked him, without trying to tip my hand, what is your historical quorum? Now, he may not know, because he had been a member, but he hadn't been in command. He said 6. I took that as the best I could find. Out of that 122 letters, including some people that are really well-known entities in that town, 6 showed up. I had a quorum. If you don't have a quorum in your constitution and bylaws, and you make some decision on business in that post, and you didn't have a quorum and someone challenges it, where do you go from that? You have to have some of these things in order to be able to stand your ground on any challenges. Inside of that manual now gives a quick definition of the post officers and the things that they do. Also has some guidelines for building a calendar. Now we had Ryan talk about the programs calendar. He then also said how you can make your phone have that calendar on it. I do mine. It's kind of tough to print it though. I'd really like that to be easier, because every post should build a calendar at the beginning of each year. And from that, you have the date that there's a suspense. Monday, we need to make sure Ryan has all the district commanders' articles for the next newspaper, right? So if I didn't see that until it was the day of the suspense, I may not be able to get there, just like Law Enforcement Officer of the Year or any of those other things. So you need to take that calendar as your basis, back off from that, how many days you think it'll take you to do it, and mark that on your calendar, and that's then your planning calendar, at least for those things. And each thing in your post is like that. My first year of command was 2005 for my post. I didn't know I was supposed to be the one that was getting the November 11th guest speaker. So I ended up being it, and that didn't work as well as I would like it to have. So you need to make that calendar, and there's some guidance here. The Manual of Ceremonies is in there. Now part of this is to talk more than just the Constitution and bylaws. In that book is the ceremonies for a regular meeting, and yes, you can hold that book open and try to go through it, fumble the pages and fold it over, and I've seen people do that. But there are many scripts that are out there that you can get your hands on that are just word, and you can modify it, print it, have it there in front of you instead of fumbling with that book. Put some yellow stickies with how many members he had and what their names were that have passed away, and run your meeting very well. I'm going to talk about what the commander ought to have in his meeting book. He needs to have a meeting agenda. Why an agenda? Because if you haven't figured out what you're going to do before you get there, you're probably not going to have a very effective meeting. If you can publish that agenda, or at least post it before the meeting, then other members can be prepared. Anything that's old business should have been in the previous set of minutes. We need a meeting script. I truly think that script is going to be your key, and it's your script. If you don't like the way something is done from the ceremonies, it's your script. I did not use the standard POW one. My father was a POW in World War II, so I've got a vested interest in things, and so I have different words that I put with the POW flag. This is my script. Who's going to tell me no? Annual calendar. Because that old crotchety fart that you've got in your group, and everybody's got one or else it's you, is going to be saying, wait a minute, I thought that Chaplain's Day was in March. You pull it up and say, oh no, that's on the 3rd of February. If you don't have that calendar there, you may not know when it is. The post-constitution and bylaws. Because if you say you're going to do an election one way, if you say this is how we're going to do our 5th grade flag essay, if it's not written out someplace, how are you going to back that? Had a conflict come up recently inside my district. A person that had been a chairman for a while had a habit that person did that was very effective in making some things work. The person that replaced them didn't know that was their habit. And that when there was a glitch, the old chairman said, oh, but you're supposed to do this. The new guy was, oh my gosh. So he pulls out all the documents and says, it's not in here. Well, if there's a good idea, we share it in a different way. We'll get along to that one as we go. But the more you have written out, the better it is. The district constitution and bylaws for the post. Why is that? Well, how does the district do that? If you have that constitution and bylaws there, then you're ahead of the game. The district operating structure. How many people are not familiar with operating structures? Okay, I got to say that I wasn't, and I was a chairman of a department committee, and I'd looked at that one little page was over the leadership committee when I chaired it. I hadn't paid attention to anything else. I guess I did it also when I was chair of the Centennial Committee. But when I went to the district and they said, here's the DOS, and I kind of skimmed through it, I thought, well, it's nothing I need to pay attention to. Oh my God, I didn't know how much I didn't know. If you have that, you're doing better. If you have the department operating structure, they also say how they're going to do things. So if the question is, when does department have for this suspense, you're going to find it there. Minutes of the last 3 meetings. Why 3? Because sometimes it's been, well, a month or so ago, we talked about such and such. Whether it's you or the adjutant that then goes, I don't see it in the minutes. I don't know when it was done. That's just one more spot you don't have to guess or say, well, okay, what do you recall? Members roster. Depends upon the size of your post for that as well. The membership roster for Marion Post 298 is over 1,100. That's an awfully big roster. It's kind of hard to keep up with things there. And it wouldn't give us as much because it's the same 60 people that show up every time anyway. So it's not like we can use it a lot. But it's, if you can, that fits very well. Your last newsletter, because once again, that crotchety old feller out there in your audience says, last newsletter said you were going to do this last Sunday. I came and no one was here. And you have the newsletter there, you say, no, Charlie, it says 20th, not 27th. The budget. Why the budget? How many people have blown a budget because they didn't know about it? Didn't know how much money they had? Just me, huh? Mm-hmm. My first year as commander, there was a conflict going on, and I said, well, let's just cater this. We did. It wasn't in the budget. We didn't do well that year. We broke the budget because I did it. And a notes page. And Robert's Rules of Order. This leads us to my topic that I've also taught in previous classes of continuity books. Each person at each level ought to have a book that has how they go about doing their things. Just like those two chairpersons. The one sent out a letter of invitation to everybody that was influenced by it that the other guy didn't know about. Boy, it'd have been nice if he'd had a book that said do that instead of not and have somebody tell them they're wrong. When I was commander, I created a continuity book. I put these things together, and I also had some write-ups. During my first year in command, we had a member who had really crossed some lines in the bar, and I held a hearing to remove his Legionnaire membership. You can do that. It's in these books. I took notes because I held a hearing, let him bring in some witnesses in mitigation and extenuation, got a better idea what all had gone on. I gave him a letter of suspense, and I told him 90 days that he couldn't come to the bar. He then always treated me with respect, I always treated him with respect, and everything went along fine. Having those notes in there, hopefully the next person wouldn't have to do that again. I had been told that previous commanders had had problem with this guy, and there were no notes anyplace. There's nothing I could do to say, but 2 years ago, they tried to do this with you, and 3 years ago this, and having those notes would be better. So a continuity book can help you help the person that follows you. A historical record of the specifics of the committee. Well, how much did we give for the 5th grade flag essay winner a couple years ago? Didn't we just increase that? If you got that listed there, you can flip it back and say, okay, in 1917, we changed it to this. Not a glimmer out there for 1917, huh? Okay. And a guide to help from errors. So the continuity books can help you be a little better. I told you I'm going to read them all to you here. Okay. One of the things that I have learned at this midwinter is more about COVID. And a part of that, Dwight Dinkla, who I don't spot back in here now, Dwight has given me some valuable guidance as I prepared to teach this portion. So electronic meetings are here to stay. Will we do the big things with them all the time? I hope not. But think about it. My district finance committee, there's 7 of us, we can meet on Zoom and approve 5 different claims or requests for reimbursement in 15 minutes, be done. And no 2-hour drive one way or the other to get there. So we can be more efficient, spend less of the district funds by using these. We need to know how we can do them legally. So this is where I kind of talked with John even about. I had requested the department change their constitution and bylaws so that then the districts and the posts would have that to go from. I've learned much better than that recently. The committee that Dave had reported with has done some changes of some things there, but we do not need to necessarily make those long changes for the COVID. I'm only going to talk about the red stuff here. Articles of incorporation or bylaws of a nonprofit corporation may provide a meeting is not required to be held in a geographical location. What? Okay. You can have an official meeting through Zoom. What I showed you at first was the law of Iowa. Unless we counter that law, we don't have to rewrite everything. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If your constitution and bylaws specify in a way that is not then allowed by this, that's what needs to change. We don't have to have it all written out. But Roger's idea, and what I will try to do in a couple places, is just have an annex page that said during the COVID virus, this is the way things were done and they didn't violate the law. So the next time, if this ever comes around again, God forbid, that they'll have that guidance there with the Constitution and bylaws. Next one there are various ways for members to vote. This again is Iowa law. Voting can be by telephone or virtual environment, including email, and paper ballot as well as by proxy. Do we normally allow proxies in the Legion? Yeah, not so much. Law allows it. So how do you want to figure from there? Well, if you don't normally have to come up against it, you may just leave it alone. It's legal. But if you want to have it as clear as you can, you want to make sure you specify as close as you can. Virtual or telephonic meetings of board of directors, blah, 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 blah. Yes, we can have those meetings too. When the COVID hit, Commander Kessler had DEC meetings on Zoom, and we all had a quick uptick on how we could learn with Zoom. And for a while, we had a meeting almost once a week for about a month, trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to go forward with our Legion from here? No one traveled. No one got exposed. We did our business and went on about stuff very quickly. It's here to stay, gang. So what we need to do is prepare for that. The Constitution and bylaws, if they counter that, have a problem. So when you look at your Constitution and bylaws, as I challenged you to at the beginning, look and see if there's anything that would prohibit us from doing that. And if so, then that's what you got to live by. It's not going to be in the department one. It's anything that's going to mean we can't do that. So I'm sure department will continue doing that. But at your level, if you have a hybrid meeting with your posts, which many of them are doing now, and you have a vote, as long as that is not just a recording that they can see, if they can interact enough to call in and vote, it's all legal. And we can include those people that can no longer make it to our meetings. A guy that's been in my post since they invented dirt, was the adjutant for forever, now can hardly get around. He can't make it to the meetings. But if we give him an opportunity where he can from his nursing home now, I'll bet he will, and he will still be participating and giving us his crotchety old man virus or ideas to us. Email is good. Let's talk about an email vote, though. If I get an email that I'm trying to figure out between the lines, I sent one out recently. I said, I want you to vote back either physical or virtual. One guy sent me 2 paragraphs. Okay, got to read between the lines. How would you document that? You print them all out, you staple them together with the minutes of that meeting, and you save it, just like we do minutes from anything else. So the Constitution of the American Legion is in that officer's guide. The bylaws of the American Legion is in that officer's guide. Next step would be department, right? I went to the department site. I clicked on resources. You know, a lot of people have said you type in this, / resources. And I don't know if any of you are geeks, but you know a whack is one direction and a slash is the other direction, and if you get them wrong, it won't work for you. Seriously. I went to resources. Then I went to department forums. Then I went to Constitution and bylaws for the Department of Iowa. That's it. I mean, it's available to you now. It's not like you're going to say, hey, John, can you send me a? It's there. You can get it. You can print it. The Constitution. Now, the bylaws, I saw that it says bylaws at the beginning, but in the middle of it, there's probably a header from the previous thing where it still says Constitution here, but you can tell it's Article 1 to Article 2. That's the bylaws. Sometimes you just got to use your common sense if there's something that's an error. Somebody says, well, it's not right because that's what it, yeah, right. Shut up, Ed. Not this Ed, my crotchety old Ed.
Yeah, right. Right, man.
Also, I talked about the DOS. The department operating structure is in the same place. ialegion.org, click on resources, department. There's more stuff there than we know. Earlier when it was said that there were some 5th grade flag essays on it, I thought I knew a lot about that site and I didn't know where they were. Department operating structure tells us how we do our stuff. Tells how the committees work. If you want to know what a committee is responsible for, here's internal affairs, here's Americanism, there's finance. It's got it there for you. The district operating structure normally has about one more layer added to it. I was handed my DOS as a new commander, didn't really look at it. When somebody finally brought my attention, said, didn't you read that? District commander, there's my budget. Tells me what meetings I'm supposed to go to. Talks on about when meetings are. This is great stuff. If you have to start your Constitution from scratch, if you start with those documents that are there inside the officer's guide, and then go to your American Legion Charter, National Constitution bylaws, Department Constitutional bylaws, Department operating instructions, district. If you've got county, and then you start off on yours, that suggested form is one then that fits very well. What you can do, if you still have questions, is you can ask for help. There's a lot of people that will give you some advice. Also, you can ask a fellow post to give you a copy of theirs so they can look at it. There was a gentleman here during this weekend that told me he really appreciated when I sent him a copy of the ones for my post. My post has a post home and it has a Veterans Club portion that's incorporated. Remembered the word this time. And then the post itself incorporated, and so it's different. So like when that post had taken mine and just changed the numbers, it had stuff in it that they didn't have. So when you borrow somebody else's, make sure that you at least sterilize it to the point where it's right for yours. So today, I've talked to you about the Constitution and bylaws and what it is for your post. I've talked about how you can make one if you don't have it. What are your questions on the Constitution and bylaws? Yeah, Jim.
In regards to the electronic communication in the meetings, you said something that if it wasn't in there, it was probably already legal unless it's specified that it wasn't. there's a, I remember a portion of a paragraph in our district bylaws where it says that no business can be voted when it's not in the physical boundaries of our district. Which means that some of the stuff that we do at, state convention or here is kind of restricted.
Yeah.
So that would have to be changed in order to make other things fit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you'd have to take that out of your, did you say that was a department or district?
District.
Yeah, you'd have to take that out of your district to make sure that you don't, by your rules, say, I can't play with that. Absolutely, that's exactly it, Jim, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Now I'm going to tell you that there's an error on the schedule. My next class, I've got a lot of work into and I'm very proud of. It's going to take us an hour. When it came out as 30 minutes, I immediately called John going, ah! I hope that this next class will be beneficial to you. And without further ado, I will jump after that rascal. See if I can control the mouse. All right. When I started this class, this topic, it was one that was given to me because I've got a vision. My undergraduate degree is in education. In the Army, it seemed like they had me teaching a lot. And since I've been here in Iowa, I've been on the leadership committee for 9 years, and I've taught a fair number of classes other than that around my time. I believe in training. I believe in training is how we're going to get places. Now, there's a reference that's on the back table that I'm only going to refer to once very briefly, and you don't need it in your hand right now to stay along with this class, because I'm only going to talk about one thing, but this has got some great stuff. What I've put together is for Iowa. It's not a book that was done by somebody that had a bigger vision. So to start with, to find that document if I wanted it, I went to legion.org, I went to the search block, put in Guide for Post-Training, and the PDF was right there. So what's our biggest hurdle for post-training? It's that Attendance, okay. I'm going to call that negative inertia. We don't do it that way. Newton's first law, things that are at rest tend to stay in rest, things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. That's exactly what I mean here. If your post has some training every meeting, then to you it doesn't seem something odd. I've not been in a post that was like that. Mine's going to be the kicking and screaming into the next generation when we start training. My only reference to that book is on page 2. I'm going to give you a moment to read that. I guess I should have stepped over out of the way then. Training is integral to our development. Okay, so what are we trying to develop? Well, Legionnaires need to be experts. Right now, if I was to give you all a quiz, can every one of you name the 4 pillars without having to think about it for a while? I still have to think about it for a while, and I've been doing this kind of stuff a while. Every Legionnaire needs to know about those because those are the foundations of our organization, and if we have things that support those, we need to know what it is that supports those. Oratorical. Who's eligible? What are the rules? What are the dates? What are the scholarships? Because those scholarships keep changing. 5th grade flag essay, same sort of thing with the awards. 4 chaplains, why do we still honor them? And what was it that they did? The scholarships each post may have. What's the variety? What's the eligibility? What are the requirements? The benefits of membership. Okay. Eligibility, there's a big one with that for us because the Legion Act changed. And there's still a lot of people that just say, well, they changed that, but I'm not sure what it is. If our Legionnaires don't know when that span is that's now eligible, and how can they tell somebody that they're eligible? Now, I don't know, I don't have a membership form with me, but that's what it used to be like. I could keep them all straight in my head. The benefits. You know, most of the people that ask what's in it for me aren't going to find necessarily that the Legion's what's right for them. Most Legionnaires that I know, it's what more can I give? Where can I continue to make a contribution? That's the way I sell it. But they have documents that are full of just what benefits we get as Legionnaires. We can talk about lobbying. There's more than just the GI Bill. There's one mention here. I got to get closer to get my cheaters up where I can see that. The John Scott Hansen Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act of 2019. I don't know if I'd heard about it before I saw this, but think about it. The Legion is one of those bodies that are pushing for mental health of our Legionnaires, of our soldiers, because we're still losing too many a day. So how do we get our membership to buy in on training? That's the tough part. That's where we got to overcome the inertia. How do other places do it? Well, the one that comes to mind right away is Masons. I'm not sure how many Masons there are out here, but most of the time when I talk to a Mason about that, they're very proud of what they've learned and what they've done. You got a question? Or okay, it's good. The Masons have several things that they do that our guidelines kind of take us towards that I don't think we do very well. In our initiation of new members, they're supposed to get up before the rest of the group and recite the preamble. They're pledging to support the Constitution of the American Legion. I've not seen that done anyplace. The Masons have a whole series of hoops you got to jump through, things you got to learn. And when you've gotten through and learned those, you're proud you've accomplished that. It's kind of like how do you make a unit, a really cohesive unit in training in the military? You find the suckiest weather you can and you take them out there for a week with limited resources. And at the end of that week, when a newbie comes in and says, you weren't with us that year the commander took us out there to that mud hole. You can build cohesion in a lot of ways. Shared learning, shared hoops to jump through is the way they go about it. How do they continue doing that? Well, 32 levels of Freemasonry. They have continuing stuff once you've gotten there. Good stuff. That getting that buy-in is still going to be tough. So how do we go there? Well, the why is easy, the how not quite so much. We start with saying, what is training? Is it just formal classes? No. I want to talk about something that I saw before that I think is just one of the greatest ideas I've seen, and that is the Sample Post Handbook, which you can find in the resources on legion.org. I began to modify one of this. It's 15 pages long, and imagine if you had a book that talked about the history and traditions of your post, and you give that to a new member instead of waiting until they stumble across something the wrong way. Now, my favorite tradition I like to talk about starts with something John Durner said once. He said that at his post meeting, the sergeant at arms took a pitcher of beer and went around and refilled glasses during the meeting, correct? Post 298, you don't even bring in water to a meeting. That's their tradition. I mean, that's as diametrically opposed as you can get at it. My post had a tradition for many years that you didn't wear any hats in the post, but then we'd have a meeting. So we'd have our hats on in the meeting, and if you walk back out, then you got a hat on near the bar, and we finally got rid of that. But as we started with that, here's a new member that comes in the door, and he's wearing his hat, whether it's a Legion hat like Brian has on, or a baseball cap that says,
Cubs.
Says what?
Cubs.
Cubs, okay. And if you have a post home that's got a bar, you know there are some people that come and go to the bar, but they don't do anything else with you. They don't attend any meetings. They're not contributing in much other ways, but they're still good members. They're paying their dues. They still like to have this veterans place to get together. But normally they're not the most, well, let's say sensitive people. Take your damn hat off. Whoa. And the guy says, well, I don't need this stuff. Walks back out, doesn't come back. A good friend of mine I talked into Puffeling when he first joined. He volunteered to help at a fish fry, and of course, the fish fries have the same people to do the same jobs every time. He came and offered to help. He'd signed up for it and said, well, we don't need you. He hadn't come back into the post. And he's a buddy. I keep working on him a little at a time. But we can't afford to alienate people because they don't know what the rules are, and and they do a disservice. If we have something that's got what we do as a post, instead of walking in with a glass of water or beer, God forbid, to one of our meetings, somebody doesn't yell at them. If we're good, we go over and say, the post has a tradition not to bring drinks in. Oh man, I didn't know that. And he just sets it aside and doesn't touch it. That's how we do it. Table of contents has a lot of stuff in it. If you write the history of your post, wouldn't that be a great thing to have all your new members or all your existing members at least have access to? We still have the Centennial sites for anybody that built those so they can still see that history. But having it in a book that you hand to a new guy, whether it's a part of the initiation, I keep saying guy, sorry ladies, so got a new member. She didn't give me the bird, she just pointed at me. When you give them these hints, this is as good a training as you might be able to get at that time. So does it work when you normally hand somebody a manual or a book? Not so much. It has to be something that you can guide along or something that's worthwhile. So the types of training. Part 1 could be something as simple as sharing information like that pamphlet. Formal classes. We got all kinds of formal classes. Formal classes are a little bit tougher to get together and always make happen though. Basic training. How many of you out there have completed the Legion's basic training? Okay, a goodly number. Wouldn't it be great if we had everybody, as they took a position of leadership in the post, complete that beforehand? Wouldn't they be better prepared to be able to do better? But we don't require things in the Legion, but we can encourage things. The basic training to me is one of the best tools we've got. Previously it was the Legion Extension Institute. I forget what the first letter was. American Legion Institute. Yep. And so they had a 7-book series and then an 8th book that was the test that you had to fill out to finish that. But it was damn good. The basic training right now, this is what it looks like if you go to legion.org and you type in basic training. And I've signed in here because I completed it several years ago. So here it says you've passed the course one time. Here's where your graduation was in 2017. Here's black and white or color to print your certificate. And oh, by the way, you can order a pen if you want because this is free. Once you sign in and start it, you can sign back out of it, come back later, it'll remember where you've been. And this is what that screen looks like. Each one of the exam sections or training sessions, and it'll show you how far along you've done. On this one, it showed the example here showing the yellow where they had completed one of them. And you can do it as many times as you want, and it's free. National says it'll take about 2 hours. I guess that means if you can read well, or if you're not really trying to retain it all. I'd put more time in that into it, and I'd already finished the Extension Institute. But it's a great tool, great tool. This is something that if you have someone coming into your post that has some initiative and drive and you want to get them some training, this is something you can just say, try that. We had a guy join us just recently. He's a Legion Act guy. And he's got a thirst to learn more. One day I mentioned to him about basic training. The next evening he sent me a copy of his certificate when he completed it. This is some training. We have access to it anytime. It's free, but it's still an individual class. So the individual online training sessions is one of the tools that most of us need to know a little bit more about. I know it's hard to see what this slide is. We're going to get to some better pictures of it, but up top, this is what it looks like if you go into legion.org and you type training in that search box. This is the page that comes up. The first 3 blocks starts off with the Training Tuesdays, last Tuesday of the month. Now when Ann said that the next class was on the My Legion, when I made these slides, the next class was on the SAL. So it has shifted. Training Tuesdays, the American Legion College, membership workshop. I'm not sure that I know anything I would get out of the membership workshop because the briefings that they do there weren't necessarily structured as a class specifically. Service officer training, I'm disappointed by this one. This one just says, yes, the Legion does service officer training. Okay, not quite what I was looking for on a page that's entitled training. Local and regional events. If we were to tell National that we were going to have training today and we were going to stream it, we'd probably be listed on this page. Children and Youth Conference. Americanism Conference, District Training in a Box, I'm going to come back to that. Contact National, okay, that's not really training. Newsletters, we'll talk to that some more in a minute. Constitution bylaws, where would I go if I wanted to find their Constitution bylaws? On their page, right here. Writing a resolution, if you've never had a class on that, you know it's not an easy thing to do. You have to learn how to cross all the I's and dot the T's to make it work for you. And mylegion.org, the worst disappointment to me on all of it, because I know there are classes that are done training on My Legion. This is just a link to My Legion. Whatever. Training Tuesdays. The last Tuesday of the month during supper. Okay. Not necessarily the time I want to jump on and watch a class. But they record them. So as Dave gave us a class earlier on temporary financial assistance, there's their class. Here's the National Emergency Fund, Blue Post Assistance Program grants, Operation Comfort Warrior. I mean, these are the sort of things that we could use in a post meeting. 5-6 minutes. A couple of them are a little longer than that, but you choose one of these and you say, okay, guys and gals, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a quick clip. It's going to take about 10 minutes. Please give me your patience, and you start down the road with training. Now, that's just one thing you could do to do the training. But these clips also have the PowerPoint and question and answers. Friday, December 18th, Department My Legion status update. November 24th, post administration. My Legion, buddy checks. And I'm now going to show you one of these so that you see the quality of what's there. I'm not saying it's going to be the greatest thing that's you've ever seen. And just like Dave, I can't see the mouse here. So give me just a moment to bring this up, please.
But there's a beer, didn't you?
Boy, that sounded awful bush light.
My Legion is a members-only website that first became available in 2010 to American Legion members, post adjutants, district and county commanders, and departments. In December 2020, a new release of My Legion is scheduled. This presentation will provide a preview of what current users are to expect the first time logging in. Here are a few items to expect when the new My Legion site goes live. First, the homepage will have a new design. Both the My Legion homepage and landing page, when logged in, will have a new look. Account access has been updated. The new My Legion login account will be attached to the individual member record. An email address will be required on the membership record to have an account. The level of access once logged in is determined by the officer activity on the member record. Current account administrators will not change. Site administrators include post adjutant, squadron adjutant, county commander, district commander, detachment adjutant and commander, and department adjutant and commander. The new version of My Legion will provide current administrators tools to manage additional user access. Since the account is associated with the member record, login credentials do not need to be shared. Account administrators can provide authority to others that need access to post data. The first time logging into My Legion, all users will be required to sign up and register a new account. Account authentication will require an email address. If an email is not on the membership record, one will have to be reported prior to creating a login for My Legion. If you do not have an email address, there are many providers that offer free services. Microsoft offers free email accounts. Create an account by going to outlook.live.com in your web browser. Follow the path to create a free account. Once an email account has been created, contact National Headquarters, Customer Service, or your department headquarters to add the new email to your membership record. When the new My Legion site is launched, you will notice the home page's new design. It includes quick access links to legion.org and emblem sales. All current posts, squadrons, districts, counties, detachments, and departments that have accounts will select Log In. All previous usernames and passwords are no longer valid. Do not enter a previous username or password in this window. Begin by selecting Sign Up. In the Sign Up window, enter the email address. The email entered must match the email on the administrator's membership record. If an email is not found on the administrator's record, our customer service team can assist by calling 1-800-433-3318. The mobile number is optional and can be left blank. If entering a phone number, the device must be able to receive text. The two-factor authentication is checked. Uncheck the box to prevent having to authenticate the account each time you log in. Continue by clicking Next. A Verify Account window will appear with a message the user is registered and that a one-time password will be sent to your email. Do not close this window. You will need to return to this page and enter the one-time password. Proceed by going to your email for the code. The email will be from American Legion Identity Provider. Do not reply at legion.org. If you do not receive an email, check your spam, junk mail, or any other personal message management system that may hold emails. This email will be sent immediately. If you do not receive an email, call customer service to verify the email on file agrees with your My Legion account. An email is required for My Legion access and is the only method to receive a code. Return to the Verify My Legion Verify account window, enter the security code, and verify. A welcome page appears where you will create your password. The two-factor authentication box provides extra security when logging in. Leaving the box checked will require a security code sent via email each time you log into the site. If you do not want to go through this process with each login, uncheck the box and click Next. If more than one member have identical email addresses, a list of all members with that email will appear. Select the name of the member that is the administrator. The only accounts with post access will be those of administrators. The other records will have access to their membership record only. Now you are logged in. The new page identifies the member by name with My Account links to view member information. Quick access to member-only benefit discount codes, online American Legion subscriptions, donation opportunities, and contact information are located at this page. Previously, My Legion had two separate accounts. One as a member and one as an officer. Now, there is only one sign-on for every member, and additional access is defined by the office's HEL. To access member information, click My Account. The My Account area provides information on your membership record. Navigation from your member record to post information is done by selecting the group. Groups are defined as post, district, county, squadron, department, and detachment. Members that hold multiple officer positions will have more than one group. To view and edit post membership information, go to My Groups. The officers page is identified as Post Profile and will look much different than the current officers page. The bulletin board is replaced with a dashboard that displays annual membership comparisons and current year membership information such as current pay, current goal, and goal percentage. The My Views menu still provides familiar tools such as view members to look up and edit, identify members renewed online, members with My Legion registered accounts, reports and labels, paid up for life shortcut, global member lookup, and online membership processing. Post information is still available along with online consolidated post reports, publishing tools, and officer materials. Notice on this page the group identified is the post. Selecting My Account returns you to your personal membership information and exits the post. To view more videos related to My Legion, go to legion.org, training, My Legion, to be released in December 2020.
And we hope not. That's already passed. Now there's two reasons that I chose that as what I wanted to do at this particular part. One, for this audience, it's probably not wrong at all because there's a lot of us that need to get ready for the coming of the My Legion. If you don't have an email address in your records and you don't have a login into My Legion as an individual, you're not going to get to play because all of the group ones that we're using now are going away. I, as a district commander, have given each of my vice commanders and my membership guy the password, the login and password for the district database. But you're not going to do that anymore. Each person will have to sign in as himself, and then the administrator, which I as the district commander being the administrator, will have to grant them access just like you do databases in the real world. That's how this is going to come along, and if we don't have our people prepared with accounts and they've already logged in, we're going to have chaos for a while. Prior planning is only good when done in advance of the event, and it's not like we haven't heard about it before. Now, before I move on from this slide, you'll notice that there is a October 27th, My Legion, and there's one from December 18th. The December 18th is 2 hours. It goes into more like Ann had done earlier. This one was just the, hey, look, this is coming, folks. It's our prior warning. It's the warning order that allows us to start getting our accounts ready to go forward. How does National help us do this? Well, we've been told more than once. My Legion coming in December. Single web sign-on is here. If you haven't noticed that things are already mixing and changing for this, you're just not paying attention to it. So we need to get ready. I used that one specifically because it was not exciting, but it was stuff we needed. If I did that at a post, half the people would be asleep by then, just like here. Not a chuckle along. Thank you. So as you pick what things you want to try to do at a meeting, you're going to have to look at them and see if they're appropriate for your group as well as what the subject matter is. The subject matter was good here, but the delivery wasn't nearly so good on that one. So we're now looking at the e-newsletters, one of those things from the training page. And we can sign up for all sorts of ways that they will let us know what's coming. So I have signed up for every place there's a check mark. The online update, the commander's message, the flag alerts. Now this is national flag alerts. I've also signed up on state level, so if the governor says, I know. And the only reason I want to know is I'm driving down the road and see a flag at half-mast, go, what? Right? So we don't hear about it unless we seek it out. Online update, commander's message, flag alert. I'm not so much into the baseball program, so I didn't subscribe to it. Legion Riders, I really like the Riders. I ride most of the legacies. The digital dispatch, training in the American Legion, a training newsletter. If you have someone in your post that you say, I'd like you to be the training officer, then they ought to subscribe to this to see what National is doing and what tools are out there for them. Member discounts, if there's that person that says, what's in it for me? And the Sons of the American Legion, I'm a member of the Sons and very proud of that. So, now to group training. Most of that I've talked about is individual training, for basic training on through Training Tuesdays and the stuff that's available there. Our first level is the State Leadership School. State Leadership School is over weekend. The guidance today, and as David pointed out, I had just missed before, that what we're supposed to train at department level is districts. What districts are still supposed to do is train posts. My district, I've had 2 training sessions for anybody that wants to attend. I initially was going to do them all physically. I have 6 counties, each in a 2-county area. So I did my first one over at Bluegrass for those 2 counties and anybody else who wanted to show up. And Randy, you back there? Yep, Randy showed up, didn't you? Yep. So I invite anybody. I have sent it out to all of the district commanders when I'm having a training opportunity, especially if it's online, because anybody is welcome to it. Doesn't cost me a daggone thing. If we share those opportunities, they work good. Here, this is a 3-day organization that's focused on district training, and it's not bad. How many people have been to the leadership school? Okay, so enough of you know about it that it's good stuff. National American Legion College with her commandant, Dave Rabine, Chancellor, right? Chancellor. I got an opportunity to attend that in 2017. It's a 5-day program. Lots of words up there. Just going to say it's the Legion's capstone program. Did I learn a lot? I learned a lot what I didn't know. I learned a lot about where to go look things up. It was challenging. Most nights we ended up working doing stuff. So it was more a bit of an exercise in can you accomplish things and manage your time. But it's a great course. Iowa gets 1 slot a year. 1 per each of the 55 departments. Not every department sends people. If I understand correctly, a couple of departments never have. Is that correct? So Iowa, John, stays right forward in the foxhole, and he's reaching out there and grabbing any of them he can. Normally we send 2 now, right?
If they qualify.
If they qualify, okay. And what do they have to do to qualify? Basic training. Got to have that done, and then some paperwork. Group training. All right. Now, I've gone through a lot of stuff to get you now to the bottom line of what's different in what Roger has to say than that book has to say. I'm going to try to tell you how I think we can do this in every post. As we're getting ready for the 5th grade flag essay contest, I asked my chairman to come up before the post and give 5 minutes or less of what it is we're going to do, the event that's right before us. Because our Legion members are ambassadors to the community. If those Legion members are experts in what's required or asked of them there, and if they know teachers, then we get the word spread greater. We need to be experts in some things. We're going to do the oratorical contest, same thing, right before we start that spin up, or Boys State or whatever, have that chairman get up and just talk about for 5 minutes what it is we're about to do. Our audience will be more informed in what we're going to accomplish, and they'll be able to go out and explain it more to others. That's doable. That's doable without having that knee-jerk reaction we'd have. We say, well, we're going to have a class after meeting tonight. Because an hour before or after gets tough. Our executive board at Post 298 meets right before the meeting, so that hour before wouldn't work. And an hour after is normally getting kind of late, and several beers to the wind by then. On a different day, that's also tough, right? I mean, if you've tried to do that, on a Saturday you have a training session. We had the lead training come through. That was done twice in the state, and Marion was one of the 2 sites because we're kind of central to that side, and 15 people maybe showed up to it because it's not something we can pull off easily. That training in the class is the stuff that I think we can do easily now and begin. The short clips, I think, are things we can do and win. And there's so much that we need to do. My post has no idea of the history of the post, even though I got up before them several times as the Centennial Chairman there and told them about the errors that were on our initial application for charter and what came down to us and how the group had changed their mind. And that was during the Centennial when everybody was leaning that way. There's a lot out there. National has made a series of clips that are to strengthen the nation. And they deal not only with our past, they deal with, like that one is the legacy and vision. And if you haven't heard the words about the legacy and vision, that's where we're kind of going. Like when we changed our motto from Forgotten Country to Making America, Veterans, Making America Stronger. I got some words wrong again.
Veterans strengthening America.
Veterans strengthening their area. Thank you. I got that instructor mind going. My mind's going faster and my mouth is missing with some of those marks. So here is a list of those they've got. So we go back to here, Americanism, a square deal for every child. We know about when that was in history. Emergency response, community service, honor and remembrance. We see the time. That's a 10-minute movie. That's a 6:38. That's a 9:56. Most of these are 10 minutes or less. So you say, okay, guys, we're now going to watch a quick movie. You turn the lights out, leave everybody sitting there, close the door, and play it. Yeah, it's an ambush. But most of them at the end of that are going to have one more thing that they know about our Legion family. Training in a box that I pointed out earlier. Now for the district commanders, those of us that got to go to Indianapolis 2 years ago when COVID hadn't hit, we had some classes upon the training in a box. The districts are supposed to train their posts. Basic training offline course. That basic training course also has an in-person thing that you can use to teach it. And it's got from the basic training PowerPoint, here's the video clips used, all of the stuff that's needed to check class. Inside the district training in a box, training phase 1, membership development, membership recruitment, membership. Notice though these two here that are post adjutant and post commander. There are specific courses designed in the training in a box for a district commander to use to train post commanders and adjutants. The new post commander course. Woohoo! Now, is that all exciting stuff? No more than that first movie clip I showed you was all exciting stuff. And this you can modify. It could go into some tangent that doesn't apply to your posted audience. Take those slides out. It's yours to use as a tool. I've used this one when I gave that first training to my district a year and a half ago. Adjutant's course. There's the things that were in the adjutant's box. And when we get to the pamphlets available, there is a pamphlet for virtually everything. I want to start off with the one thing that has come out in the last couple of years that I think is going to help us on membership, and that's buddy checks. I had one of my post commanders call and ask how I was doing with COVID. Damn, that felt good. I called Ron Struble, Randy's brother-in-law, our past department commander, department commander. I call him, go visit him, but that's not really the buddy checks that we're talking about in this case. I'm checking on my buddies, those that are injured and can't make it around. But what do we do for our posts? Well, this one's specifically designed for coronavirus pandemic. Here's the one that's for the 2 one-week sessions that the Legion has declared for us to do buddy checks. Really? There's 2 of those we're supposed to do that? Yeah, I guess I saw it in the newspaper someplace. Has anybody organized and done it? I hope so. We haven't. The scripts that they have there are what help you so that you don't stumble all over your tongue when you're starting. And then as we come here, they've got even more scripts that are available to us. A page of just that. And now we're going to look at our second flick of the day. And this one, I think you will find, is very well done. Maybe.
Post 60 in Laurel, Maryland. This is my video on how our post conducted buddy checks this year. My daughter Mary is going to help make her dad seem a bit less boring.
First, a confession. When I got this assignment, we hadn't actually done buddy checks yet. So there was nothing else to do but roll up my sleeves and get to it. The first step was to huddle with the commander and the My Legion website. I downloaded a spreadsheet of all the members with their personal data and sorted it by renewal year. Post 60 is a reasonably large post with about 670 members. When you only have a couple of weeks, that's a lot of people to contact. To reduce this list, we decided to focus on current members who had not yet renewed for 2020. We then eliminated anyone from the list who we see regularly at the post. I prepared phone scripts, modifying the ones from the Legion website. I made 2 scripts, one for local members and a second for those that live far away. For the local members, we invited them to our 100th anniversary party next week and to our early bird party in October for all who renew by then. For the out-of-town members who are unlikely to attend either event, I focused on simply thanking them for supporting us from afar. In both scripts, we asked how the member was doing and if we could help them with anything, and closed by thanking them for their service to the country and membership in the Legion. I also prepared information sheets with answers to questions I thought members might ask. I wrote a fact sheet on all the ways to renew your membership. I had the post and department service officers' contact info handy to help with VA benefit questions. I reviewed our post procedures for applying for temporary financial assistance, and I got a copy of the post calendar to answer questions about upcoming events. Finally, in case the call turned into a membership sales pitch, I prepared a sheet to answer the question, why should I renew if I don't use the post lounge? I listed and described all the national level programs that membership dues help fund and some of the legislative efforts the Legion has pushed for. I made a list of all the post programs and charitable activities. Okay, calling roster prepared, scripts written, fact sheets ready, time to get some help. After some friendly arm twisting, I got 2 hardy souls to assist me. We divided up the roster with me taking the biggest part. After all, this was my bright idea. And in a week of calling, we reached as many of those 310 unrenewed members as we could. We learned a lot in the process. Here's some key takeaways. For planning purposes, expect to make no more than 20 calls an hour. About 15% of our members don't have phone numbers in the national database, and about half don't have an email listed. We'll need to work on this in the future. Before you call someone, review the roster to learn a little about the member, where they live, how long they've been a member, and what era they served in. This will help you customize your call to their Legion experience, location, and age. No matter when you call, you'll spend a lot of time leaving voicemail messages. 4 out of every 5 calls went straight to voicemail. And if you're not ready for that, you'll fumble and stutter through your script, which won't sound that good when they play the message back. Rehearsal is key. But also, your script is probably too long. At least ours was. Some voicemail machines will just cut you off if you go on too long. We found it best to keep the voicemail message less than 30 seconds. After a while, I edited my pitch down to introducing myself, thanking the member for their service and Legion membership, announcing the 2 upcoming events, and leaving a phone number in case they needed anything. Some people just don't like to be called. They've probably been overwhelmed with telemarketers and see you as just another one. You can normally pick up grumpy suspicion in their voice when they answer the phone. In this case, tread very lightly on any talk of renewal, because it sounds like you're just asking for money. Instead, thank them, ask them how they're doing, maybe inquire a bit about their service or where they live. Just let them know you care. If you do get a person on the line and they aren't in a hurry to hang up, take a second to validate their address and email. People move and don't always update their records. And finally, be prepared for interesting questions. Besides the stuff I had prepared for, I also got questions about paid up for life memberships, how to buy a Legion cap, and if I could stop by a member's house to pick up a few American flags he wanted to donate. So now the big question, was it worth it? Well, I'm not sure we'll ever be able to measure the buddy check's effectiveness to the organization clearly. Most of the voicemail people never called back, so we might not know if they even played the message. I can tell you that most members we contacted seemed happy for the call once they realized we weren't selling anything. We answered some questions. A few told me the call reminded them to renew, and a large number did seem interested in coming to our events. But perhaps the biggest benefit of the buddy check was to me. I spent many hours reviewing the membership roster and trying to learn a little about each person before calling them. When I got someone on the phone, I learned a little more. The Legion is supposed to be about comradeship and support, and it's hard to be a good comrade to someone you don't know. Even the members we never see are a part of this grand organization. The buddy check reminds us, the leaders, of who our members are. They've paid their dues and put their name on the roster next to ours. We should do our best to keep them connected to our post and the Legion.
Now you can figure why I used that one, because it was a really good movie. I mean, it was well produced. It wasn't dry. You know why the first one was like it was? There are two rules that always apply to old guys. You can't hear and you can't whisper. So everybody in here thinks they're whispering to somebody else. You know they're not, because everybody else is looking around at you.
Talk about me again.
Not just you.
I heard that.
And sometimes you'll call one of the friendliest guys in a red cap with the initials DS to just ask a question. He starts with, "What do you want?" Right, Dennis? And I was asking about the oratorical competition was going on. You're going to find lots of responses. You're going to find lots of things. Let's go back to the original thing about training. What I want you to leave here with is an idea that you can. And you don't have to start with showing a movie. You don't have to start with a physical class an hour before, an hour after, a different day. You can start with something as little as having the chairman for whatever is coming up get up and describe it to your people to make them a little smarter. You're then training your members. A member that knows more about that program is more likely to talk with others about it. And the more the word spreads, the better we can support our programs. So ladies and gentlemen, I know I've gone kind of hard and quick on some of this. I know our time was not programmed quite the way, and I hope that if you have any questions, you would ask me now. I believe those online can ask questions on the Facebook page. Is that correct? That we said before? So if you've got some of those, they'll pass them to me and I'll get to you. Yes, Jim?
SAL can do this on basic training stuff too, or is it just for Legion?
Well, you go to legion.org, you have to have a membership number. I'm not sure if they'd be rejected or not. I would imagine they'd be able to do it, but I don't know. I don't know. Sir?
I, as a member of the SAL, have, and only a member of the SAL, have basic training.
Okay,
So
cool.
I'm a dual member, so I can use my SAL member number. They can go on to do it. All right, thank you.
Any other questions of me? Well, I'll turn this back over to Brian then and get out of your all's hair.
Very good, Rod.
Thank you, Roger. Well, I thank you all for being here today. I hope you learned something, I hope you grabbed something, and you can use it at your post level in your district. And I'm glad we had this good day. Even though we had some bumps here and there, we worked it out, and we had a good training session, I think. So, any further business for this training group? Any questions? Anything else before we can disband? Okay. Well, again, I thank you all for coming. Please rise. With flags in place, hand salute. 2. We are adjourned. Have a good day.